Mount up! We're coming!
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider presented by FanDuel. Matthew Coller here. Just got back from Vikings minicamp at TCO Performance Center, and later on in the show, you're going to hear from Tyler Dunne. We recorded a conversation out there this afternoon, and we'll talk a lot of, obviously, quarterback situation, NFC North, and so forth, but we'll start with what I saw, what I heard from the first day of Vikings minicamp, and we'll be out there tomorrow. Emily Leica will join the show, and then we'll do a complete spring recap with Dane Mizutani on Thursday. So total coverage here at Purple Insider. But the day started out with 2 interceptions from Kyler Murray, so now they should trade him instead of JJ McCarthy. I'm just kidding, but that is how it started out. So the way that these practices work during minicamp is usually they ramp up to where the last day is the most intense. This would be the least intense, and then a little bit more and a little bit more. But at no point is a minicamp practice like a training camp practice. There is no physicality, and there is not full speed really happening at any point. So everything in terms of what's going on in the field should be taken with a little bit of grain of salt. And this is also why talking about it as a quarterback competition at this time of year is kind of hard to do. And we're going to get into that. Kevin O'Connell talking with Lindsay Theory of ESPN. She kind of tried to press him on ESPN about when he's going to name the starting quarterback. So we should discuss that as well. But the day did start off with an interception from Kyler Murray that was a good example of what minicamp is. It was a 7-on-7 play, and a wide receiver ran one way, and Kyler threw it to a different location, and Theo Jackson caught it. It was a classic miscommunication, misunderstanding of what was supposed to be going on a specific play. And then he did throw another interception where it was a deep ball and it went a little bit too far over somebody's head and got intercepted. And the rest of the day was not really all that interesting from Kyler Murray after that. So he shook it off and they went through some 7-on-7s. He had some nice throws and decent plays, and that was that for the practice. JJ McCarthy's day was a little bit more interesting because I thought that McCarthy had a good day of practice. And if this was a competition to where we were breaking down throw by throw, who had the better day, who performed better, I think you would have said that JJ McCarthy on the whole probably had a little bit of a better day. He looked pretty well in control. He had a very nice deep completion to Ty Felton, who I want to talk about because we're focusing so much on the quarterbacks. But just give me a little side, drop off to say that Ty Felton has looked pretty strong so far in the spring. And we can't anoint anyone in OTAs or minicamp, but with Felton, he does seem to be following the path of your KJ Osborne, your Jalen Naylor, and Jauan Jennings is going to be the wide receiver 3. But, Jordan Addison's been banged up before in his career, and Jauan Jennings has been banged up before in his career. And also, Ty Felton does give you a little bit more of the deep threat because Jauan Jennings is a big bruising wide receiver, but he's not going to be flying over the top. And when Ty Felton, on a go route, gets a reception down the sideline, deep throw from JJ McCarthy that dropped right in over his shoulder, it did sort of ping in my mind. There's no rule in the NFL that you only have to use your 3 wide receivers and the 4th guy has to sit and watch. I mean, that was the case last year with Felton, but maybe a little bit redundant with Jalen Naylor, who's much more polished. And now Felton can take over that role. In terms of raw speed, Felton was technically faster than Jalen Nailor. I think Nailor had game speed that was really good, but to see him make a couple of these catches in OTA's minicamp just gives a little reminder that, yeah, just because someone did not work out in the very first year, didn't get the most opportunity in the first year, and did show themselves well in special teams, and just because they brought in a veteran wide receiver 3 who was one of the best wide receivers in all of free agency, doesn't mean that we'd have to count Ty Felton out completely and say, yeah, bust, move on, next wide receiver up. I think there is still potential there, and we've started to see a little bit of it, little signs of it in training camp. We will get much better information on whether he has improved his route running, if he can handle physicality, if he's making catches consistently, and he's a guy that's likely to play a lot during the preseason, but that was the highlight play of the day in 7-on-7, which is it's 7-on-7. It's, no pass rush and no pads and anything else. But this time of year has given us in the past some indication of where some wide receivers might be. So there is, with all caveats, Ty Felton has looked pretty good to my eye. And JJ McCarthy later in the practice, so they go through these 7-on-7s. It's as fast as it's going to get. I'd call it 80% speed, 75% speed. So they're going through that. Kyler Murray rebounds, makes a couple of good throws, and then they go to 11-on-11s, which are essentially walkthrough. They're doing it maybe 50% speed, but they kind of drop back. Everyone gets into their route a little bit, and then they slow down and decide where to throw the ball. So there isn't much you could take from them. And then they did a little bit of situational stuff today, and it was notable that JJ McCarthy was throwing to the first wide receivers while doing that. Kyler Murray came in through to the second wide receivers while doing that. That was just, I'm not sure exactly what the thought process is, if you're trying to get Kyler a little more familiar with everybody on the roster, or if that was just kind of how things worked out. But JJ McCarthy and Kyler did a good job moving the football to set Will Reichard up. And Will Reichard today was just money, as you would expect. That should have been the whole podcast, is breaking down all 8 flawless kicks. I think it was 8 for 8 for Will Reichard. But both quarterbacks were able to move the ball in a situational drill, get them to the point where they would have been in field goal position for Will Reichard. And that's the end of your practice, outside of a lot of sort of slow motion work that was going on. But for JJ McCarthy to have a good day, and most noticeably still get the distribution of reps to this point, that leads us to the next conversation. And I'll bring you what Kyler and JJ had to say today. And it was not a press conference from JJ McCarthy that's going to have him get ripped apart for a week and a half. It was a much more standard type of press conference for JJ McCarthy. But Lindsey Theory, the reporter from ESPN, came out to practice today and asked Kevin O'Connell in a little short kind of clip that she posted on Twitter, that she asked O'Connell about, when are you going to name a starting quarterback? And now I should point out that I don't remember him naming Sam Darnold the starting quarterback really ever during training camp in 2024. It was obvious who the starting quarterback was, because Darnold took all the first team reps throughout the entire spring and the summer, because McCarthy was a rookie. But through the summer, there might have been 2 or 3 series that McCarthy got to work with the ones, but it was almost exclusively Sam Darnold during training camp. But we had asked, hey, is Sam your quarterback? Is he QB1? And, it was, well, I'm not going to name a starting quarterback right now, and that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't expect him to necessarily come out at the end of minicamp and say, that's right, guys, Kyler Murray is QB freaking 1. It should be just sort of obvious by the reps when we get to training camp whether this is a real competition or not. To this point, it looks like it, but also to this point, it's not really competing. You're not really truly competing when you're doing 7-on-7s in minicamp. Overall, from the practices we've seen, it really hasn't been that close between the two quarterbacks. Today was obviously the closest day between the two because I thought McCarthy looked pretty strong overall and had a good drive where he, led the team into field goal position. And also during Kyler's time, he made a throw to the sideline and Chuck Demings broke it up. Chuck Demings is a guy that stood out pretty much every day to me during these practices. And I have to wonder if that's someone that we start to see more and more of during training camp because he does have playmaking ability, athleticism, and so forth. So that was a really good play on a decent throw, and that, set back the offense a little bit more than it was with JJ McCarthy. But the point just being that if you're trying to actually judge a competition between these two, it has to happen in late July and August. It cannot happen right now. There is no person who could go out and watch 4 series of 7-on-7 for each quarterback and go, oh yeah, man, I see that this quarterback has the distinct edge. I mean, you're not facing any pressure. And in training camp, you actually are. Like, the guys are really going after you when the pads come on. So you get at least the sense of what pressure would be. Even if you can't get hit, sacks are really bad in training camp. They just blow up an entire play. Like, you need to get rid of the football. But in this, if you don't see it right away, what you're supposed to be seeing, it can kind of just be like, okay, what was that? Tell me the play again. Tell me what I'm supposed to do. One guy knows the offense. The other guy doesn't. It's not a way to truly have a competition. So they're splitting their reps, and Murray overall during the spring has been the clearly better quarterback. Today, JJ McCarthy looked, I think, pretty good and had his best practice that's been open to the media, but in a circumstance where you just can't possibly decide on a quarterback. So what Kevin O'Connell is going to have to figure out is if they don't trade JJ McCarthy, which is just floating out in the wind a little bit. I did a couple hours conversation on that with you guys last night, and I said, I don't think it's a good time to do it. But when we get to training camp, is Kevin O'Connell going to keep going with this and make Kyler Murray really beat JJ McCarthy out to the point of, I don't know, the first preseason game, the joint practices, when we really have a decision? Will this drag out? Will we be going to training camp practices saying, all right, JJ was 8 for 12 with a touchdown in the red zone drill, and Kyler was 9 for 13. Are we going to be doing that? Or is this whole thing just to get them onboarded with the offense? Is it to maintain trade value potentially, that you're going to keep up the charade of a competition so you can put JJ McCarthy out on the market and say, well, look, I mean, he's, competing with Kyler Murray for QB1, so maybe you should give us a slightly better draft pick. Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Or does he just want to get a view of how far JJ McCarthy has come along in the offense and with his throwing? Because he can see more than I can ascertain from whether he knows where he's supposed to go with the football or not, and whether he can, get guys lined up, but you're not really lining up people. I mean, it's a 7-on-7. You're not really lining up people. You are doing it when they do their slow motion 11-on-11s. My point is just the reality of this thing will be determined later on in the summer, unless there's a surprise trade of JJ McCarthy. And right now, I don't even know how exactly coaches would decide based on what, if you were really saying, pretend we don't know anything about either quarterback before this, pretend we didn't see last season, pretend we didn't see Kyler make Pro Bowls, and we're just going in judging throw for throw. You couldn't possibly make your decision based on OTAs. Even if Kyler is clearly throwing the ball better than JJ McCarthy, it wouldn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. So the decision will either come at the end of minicamp and then they'll just start in training camp, or it will come at some point during training camp. And Kyler Murray hit on today the issue with the way that it's being approached if it is not truly a competition, which certainly doesn't feel like it based on gestures and everything. But the issue is that, and I think this was a little bit of Kyler Murray being frustrated, and we'll get into what he had to say here, that it wasn't the greatest day for Kyler Murray today. Clearly the interceptions, there were a couple of times where, maybe he checked down that there could have been somebody he threw to, and then there were fine plays. It wasn't by any means a disaster practice. It was kind of a typical looking mini camp practice under Kevin O'Connell. But, I think if you're Kyler Murray, if you're going to be the starting quarterback and you were brought here to be the starting quarterback, if you're taking half the reps, he was honest today. And I'll bring you that here. He was honest today and pretty much saying, like, it's harder for me to get the offense totally under, my feet, feet, hands, into my brain, whatever, master the offense if I'm having to split these reps with somebody else.
What's the toughest part as far as going from what you give the Cardinals to your offensively?
I think the toughest part is, again, I was there for 7 years. I know I had two different offensive systems, but at the same time, you're getting all those reps. Now having to split reps, it's me already being behind, not getting the amount of reps that, you would typically want a guy to get learning an offense. That's probably the toughest part, just, again, going back to the past, being in control of everything, understanding what we were already doing because I was comfortable within the system. Now coming into the new system, learning on the fly, trying to play fast, efficient, and let it loose while learning is pretty, that's the toughest part.
And I think that was just an honest answer from Kyler Murray, that it is more challenging when he has had all the reps during minicamp and OTAs, and he has had to learn a new offense before in 2023, but there would have been no question about the starter. And these days, that's my point, is that if it's not really a quarterback competition, then Kyler Murray should be getting more of the reps, if not all of the reps. And we'll see what happens over the next 2 days if that's a change, because I didn't feel like today was a very intense practice. And I promise you, no matter who was at quarterback, Murray, Max Brosmer, Wentz, JJ McCarthy, if they have 2 interceptions at 7-on-7, I cannot tell you enough how little that means. I mean, toward the bigger picture, it really doesn't mean a thing. One of them was a miscommunication with the wide receiver, and the other one is an overthrow on a deep ball, which happens and has happened to McCarthy as well. That's my point about trying to judge a 7-on-7. I mean, it's just not football. It's just not real football at all. And we've talked about this with JJ McCarthy and Murray, but we've talked about it with, some of McCarthy's throws where you guys have asked, well, how different does it look? Does it look like his throwing technique is different and improved? It's like, well, I mean, he had a pretty decent day today. The first day of practice, it was pretty clear, how much farther Kyler Murray is ahead of him. It's not like you can't tell which quarterback is better at throwing the football, but it's not like JJ McCarthy's problem was practice. His issue was when the games actually started and defenses were game planning for him and running the offense with 65,000 people and whatever million at home watching. That was really the issue, not so much 7-on-7. I thought last year during minicamp and OTAs, JJ McCarthy was fine. I still think it's been fine. I think McCarthy has looked totally fine. But how much different is he? He's standing there with no one around him. You guys could play quarterback with no one around you. So anyway, that's just kind of the point about the discussion that we were having today on the Hill as we're watching practice is the thirst for information about what's going on at minicamp and OTAs greatly outweighs how much we can actually gain from that. And what I'm curious about is how much are the coaches gaining from what they're seeing out here from a competitive standpoint. They are certainly gaining things from teaching Kyler Murray. I saw him spend a lot of time today with Josh McCown having a long conversation. And for Murray, this is his onboarding process. This is learning the offense. And it was not easy for the other quarterbacks at this time of year that came in. It was not that easy for Kirk Cousins. And I remember O'Connell and Cousins talking a little bit about, well, you're supposed to throw it into that window and Kirk not being as comfortable with that window and so forth, that little back and forth. when he was first learning the offense. And Sam Darnold, I mean, had, if I recall, a pretty good minicamp and threw some nice passes, but I don't remember walking out of it saying there's no chance McCarthy ever plays because Darnold is so wonderful in 7-on-7s. So anyway, my opinion here would be that if Murray is very clearly your starting quarterback for Kevin O'Connell, then you should probably just give him all of the reps rather than trying to put on an act here. But if it is a legitimate competition, then go into training camp and make it one. You kind of have to decide one way or the other, because limiting the reps from the quarterback who's most likely to start, and he's not thrilled about it, as you could hear, and maybe expressing a little frustration. But over these next 2 days, these are the only practices you get. So you kind of have to start making that decision. And just because you want the world to think it's a competition, or is it really? Because if it really is, and look, nothing's better for the old Purple Insider podcast than coming home every single day from training camp in a couple weeks and breaking down every throw, because that would be a lot of fun for all of us standing on the hill watching practice. But it just kind of made me think, well, I just assumed that the quarterbacks were, like Murray, since he had looked fine, was fine with how it was going. But if he feels like he's not getting the amount of reps that he needs to get to be comfortable with the offense, and this guy is going to be your starting quarterback, then you have to start out training camp at very least with this guy's going to be the starting quarterback, and you go from there, unless you are really going to have them duke it out practice by practice. And for a veteran, he should be able to get there. I mean, Daniel Jones last year had a competition with Anthony Richardson, and they split reps. I was looking this up. We were talking about it today. I was looking this up of what were they saying about the reps last year? And, Richardson was getting a lot of them. So is it going to be that way? Are they going to hedge a lot more than I thought they were going to hedge? I don't know, but it did make me kind of raise an eyebrow a little bit of are we really doing this, or are we not really doing this? Because it's been my feeling that we're not really doing this. And now with Kyler expressing a little bit of, I wish I had some more reps. If he's your guy, then give him the reps. Okay. I've said reps too many times. But here's Kyler talking about whether sort of the quarterback competition element of it, and trying to show what he can do to the coaches in a competition, but also get the offense down and learn at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I'm not really too worried about the competition side of things, honestly. But to answer your question, yes. The competitor that I am, obviously everybody out here, holds themselves to a high standard, and that's the unfortunate part when you do have days where you feel like, I wish I had that back, I wish I had that throwback, whatever it is, coaches reminding you, staying on you about, hey, this is the learning phase, this is, you are new to this, you got to give yourself that grace, and take it with a grain of salt, because this is the time we're trying to get better. So it's all a part of the process.
Yeah, that part there, him saying that he's not really concerned about the quarterback competition part of that, and same, Kyler, that's the approach that I've taken to this the entire time. I did show up today to minicamp thinking that they were going to just give Kyler Murray all of the reps and not worry about the rest of this thing, right? This competition, because the environment is not really suited for judging a competition now. That's much more training camp. And if you're not really going to do it in training camp, then you shouldn't really bother with it right now and just try to get Kyler all of the information that he needs and all of the plays and all of the chemistry that he can build with the wide receiver that he's going to need, and starting that now. Do I think that it would destroy the Vikings' chances of making the playoffs if Kyler got 10 less reps today than, he needed or wanted? No, I don't think that is really the case. But Kyler saying I'm not concerned about the competition element of it is Kyler essentially telling us, I'm the starting quarterback. What? I'm not worried about that, but I am worried about the lack of reps that I'm getting. And if I make a mistake out there, I don't want to have to stand on the side for 15 more minutes before I can go out and start to make a correction. And in general, I would agree with him. If you aren't going to see it as a 50-50 competition, which you shouldn't based on the two players' backgrounds, then what would be the point of giving this many reps to JJ McCarthy? It's not the controversy of the century. I'm just curious over the next couple days if we see the same distribution, if we see more of Kyler, if it's completely even, and the coaches wanted to give JJ McCarthy every opportunity to show his progress, which I think it's been a fine spring for McCarthy so far. And I thought it was a fine day for McCarthy so far. But starting him based on the real performances that have happened in real games and the idea of him potentially beating out Kyler Murray and sitting Kyler on the sidelines when he's been a Pro Bowl quarterback, it just doesn't match the smell test really at all. So that was telling, and I'm curious if there's something changes over the next couple days. Anyway, I asked him about a different subject, and I always like to bring you guys my questions when I can. So I asked Kyler about something that we've discussed when he first signed here, which is, he's a playmaking quarterback. Kevin O'Connell wants rhythm and timing to his offense. And I asked Kyler about the improvisation, playmaking versus trying to stay on rhythm and focusing on that.
What are the discussions with you and Kevin been about your scrambling and playmaking? Obviously, it's been a huge part of your game through your career, but you want to play on time and as well. How do you balance that?
I mean, I was, my pops raised me to, play on time, play from the pocket. Obviously, God blessed me with the ability to move around and make stuff happen, which right now is kind of, I'll put on pause in a sense because this isn't real football. We're not, we're going against each other. So I think the scrambling ability, the mobility part of the game hasn't really been able to be alive right now. So, but at the same time, it's good for me because I have to learn conceptually what we're trying to accomplish, play on time, be in rhythm. And that's really what wins. Obviously the sexy stuff comes later. So.
And I really will stay with this, just having watched all of the tape from the last 2 years for Kyler Murray, that he plays in rhythm much more often than people think. Like, he plays from the pocket much more often. He is not just taking snaps and running all over the place. And for the most part, I thought there was a little bit of discomfort at sometimes today. And the interceptions, but there's a little discomfort today on a few throws, which we've seen over the years from all the quarterbacks. But overall, from the pocket, stepping back, making the throw to the right read has looked very good for Kyler Murray during this spring. So it looks to me like he's largely getting it, and like he is playing in rhythm with the offense more than it has McCarthy over the spring. So I don't think that it's a massive issue that he hasn't gotten quite as many reps. But I do think that discussion is going to be ongoing between Kyler Murray and Kevin O'Connell of when do you scramble? When do you get out of there? Can you stay in there for the second and third type of reads? We know O'Connell's quarterbacks have gotten sacked a lot. They're one of the most sacked teams in the NFL over the last 4 seasons. That has to change. But Kyler doesn't have a very bad sack rate. He's kind of mid-pack or more toward the top in sack rate over his career because he can scramble as much as he can. But even in the limited 7-on-7, you can see where he is going through reads, throwing with anticipation. O'Connell said that last week, and it's looked pretty good. So that, though, as we go forward into training camp, when do you scramble? Into the season, when do you scramble? Will be something that I'm keeping an eye on. Anyway, so JJ McCarthy also had a press conference today, and ABC National News will not be breaking this one down, looking for all hints that JJ is unhappy. And I know I'm sort of making fun of myself as well as all of us, because that's the situation we're in here with this quarterback competition or quarterback situation. But this time, JJ McCarthy was well prepared, I would say, for his press conference. And he said much more of the things that he probably should have said the first time, including answering my question about splitting reps.
Just talking about kind of the challenge of splitting reps after he's been a starter. Same for you, you've been a starter in the past. What has that process been like of trying to maximize those reps every time you get your opportunity?
Those reps being distributed are something out of my control, and the only thing I focus on is that next rep, and keep it as simple as that.
Yep, that was it. And that was what he stuck to every time he was asked about the quarterback competition. But, that's not a bad way to approach it. And he did even toss in, try to be a good teammate at one point. He was asked, though, by Kevin Seifert of ESPN about the possibility of being traded. And he was pretty effusive in saying that that's not what he's looking to have happen.
Since the end of last season until now, with all the quarterback changes that have already happened, that you've thought about a trade or thought about the possibility of if you wanted to be traded?
I think I made it very clear I wanted to be here before I got here. And I love this organization. I love the coaching staff. I absolutely love these players to death. This is where I want to be. I feel like I can thrive in this system. And, it's just, everything played out exactly how I wanted it. I wouldn't want anything else to change.
So there you go. JJ McCarthy says essentially that he does not want to be traded, but whether he actually does or not, who knows? I mean, I think if I was in JJ McCarthy's shoes, I probably would want to go somewhere where I could play. Even if it was Arizona, I'd want to go there. Or if it was, I almost said Cleveland, but I'm not sure anyone actually wants to go to Cleveland. If it was Arizona, if it's New York's got Geno Smith, but it's Geno Smith. Those are the two teams that have an obvious you could go there and play right away would be Cleveland and Arizona. And Arizona, especially since their quarterback who went 1-11 last year wants more money, I think they'd be perfectly fine with shipping a draft pick for a young quarterback like JJ McCarthy. And if I was over in Arizona and I was doing the whatever the red and white insider or whatever their colors technically are, is it a crimson? I would be saying, dude, they should trade for JJ McCarthy because there's potential there. There were moments there last year, and the Vikings bailing on him this early could be the benefit. It could be like a Malik Willis situation or, something else like that. So if I was another team desperate for a quarterback, I would be keeping a close eye on this and seeing if I could potentially trade something, a day 3 draft pick for JJ McCarthy. What he wants in this situation doesn't really matter. I mean, it really comes down to what Kevin O'Connell wants. Does Kevin O'Connell want to wait and really see how this plays out? Or does Kevin O'Connell want Kyler Murray as his starting quarterback and it's pretty much set in stone, but he's going to give JJ every opportunity through the spring. So at very least he can say, look, man, I evaluated both quarterbacks through the spring and we're going with Kyler. Or, does he want to have the daily in training camp? All right, pads are on. Who's performing better? Does he want to see them both in preseason games? I mean, it just seems like such a stretch to think that that would actually happen, especially based on what both quarterbacks have said, where Kyler has said, give me my reps, man. And I'm not even worried about this competition. Whereas, JJ McCarthy said last time we talked to him, he can go sit on the other side of the room. So, I mean, there really hasn't been a whole lot other than the rep counts that would indicate that they are going back and forth. But that's we'll see. We'll see if that changes in the next 2 practices. We'll see if that changes when we actually get to training camp, if we get there with JJ McCarthy on the roster. So there's a lot of moving parts here. So anyway, all right, well, that's the report on the quarterbacks. In terms of everybody else, there's not a lot that changes when you're doing 7-on-7s. We talked about some of the player movement around on the defensive side. Brian O'Neill was there. He was not participating in OTAs. He was there at OTAs, but he wasn't participating. And Kevin Seifert reported that was contract related, but he was out there today. The offensive line's not doing a whole heck of a lot on a day like today, but Brian O'Neill is out there. So that raises the discussion of whether they will give him a contract extension. I would expect the answer is yes. I do think they want to have his leadership. I also think it's really hard to find top 10 right tackles in the league, even if it comes along with a pretty hefty price tag. Just another position that you'll have to draft. When it comes to the positions, this is just how I think of it. When it comes to the positions that you absolutely must draft, it makes sense to extend those positions because then you can focus on the rest of your roster. Like it's worth it. It's weight in gold to have that person, even if you didn't want to pay the price tag, because then you don't have to draft one. You cannot go into free agency and find starting offensive tackles. We know this. The Vikings actually lucked out when they got Riley Reif and he was halfway decent for a few years. But look at all the other, Matt Khalil was a free agent, went to Carolina and struggled. There are very few instances of going into free agency, getting a tackle and feeling good about that at any point. So I would expect that conversation starts to ramp up. Blake Cashman is still recovering from something or whatever it might be on the side field with his, it looks like his wrist. He's got something on his wrist. So he was not participating. We saw a lot of Jake Golday today, which is interesting to watch because of the way he moves, and he's playing inside linebacker. He's getting a ton of reps versus the ones, which I think is really good for Golday. And I did notice that Eric Johnson, who is a guy that they signed from free agency, a veteran defensive tackle who's been with the Indianapolis Colts, is getting a lot of work with Caleb Banks not being in yet. So those are a couple of things that I noticed, but really, Chuck Deming's continuing to stand out. Theo Jackson making a play. Ty Felton, those were kind of the people who stood out the most to me today. So why don't we get to your questions and comments, and we'll take it up to 8 o'clock. The Lynx are playing tonight. My wife is calling the game on Victory Plus. You can get that for free, by the way. It's an app on your TV or on your phone. So that's where she's calling the game. It's Olivia Miles, Paige Becker. So 8 o'clock, but I'll bring you Tyler Dunne, my conversation with Tyler Dunne from TCO Performance Center then. So we've got an hour. Let's have a conversation about minicamp and whatever else is on your mind. Throw anything in the chat that you want, and we'll talk about Vikings minicamp. But big takeaway for me today is that in a subtle way, and I didn't think it was aggressive, or I didn't think that he was, coming out and going over the top. I thought it was really just an honest answer from a quarterback that maybe wasn't thrilled with his practice from Kyler Murray to say, it's making my life harder to not have all the reps, and I'll fill in the rest for you. KOC, are you going to give him the rest of the reps of these minicamp practices or not? And is it really going to be like this in training camp? That's kind of the unsaid part of that. So let's get into your questions, comments, and thoughts, and have a good conversation. Dan says, nice to see that interview bounce back from JJ McCarthy. I'm sure this is frustrating, but he needs to keep his head high. Whether in Minnesota or elsewhere, these things can help extend a career. My preference would be that the Vikings keep him. I still hope a phoenix will arise from the ashes, but hope is all I've ever had, so why stop now? I totally agree with you. I thought that today, and no one, by the way, in my seat or anybody else's, is saying to JJ McCarthy, you have to be a peach in front of us. You just have to tell us we're so wonderful, asking you these questions and high five us all. No one expects you to be happy. The expectation would be that you take a professional quarterback approach, which would be some of the stuff that I showed there, that, even though it's not some deep and let me open up my heart to you guys and pour out all of my emotions. No one expects that. No one needs, some sort of emotional outpouring at the podium. But when you go up there like he did last time and sort of lay out, I'm not going to talk to the other guy, that from the to the people inside the building makes it look like this is just all about me and I'm not happy and whatever else. When you play for a team, they pay you a lot of money to be whatever role you have to be on the team and to be a good teammate. And O'Connell, I thought, said it perfect. You have to at least attempt to be a good teammate. So today was much more of that, at least publicly, attempting to be a good teammate for JJ McCarthy. But I do think it's going to be steps with him as he continues to mature. And at some point, there is a good chance he's going to get another shot in the NFL, because most quarterbacks who are drafted high do get another chance in the NFL, whether it's with this team or someone else. And if you're too focused on how the team has wronged you by bringing in a different quarterback, you're not going to make the type of progress that you need to make. And I thought that today was a little bit of a shift in terms of his attitude of answering the questions. And if he's going to be a good teammate to Kyler Murray and be ready at a moment's notice, then you can stay with this. And if he's not, then you probably do have to move on. Joker says, Bears fans watched Justin Fields start 38 games and half the Bears fans were convinced he was a good quarterback after watching those 38 starts. You can't trust fans. That's why I watch Purple Insider. Well, thank you for watching Purple Insider, Joker. I appreciate that. I think that when it comes to starved fan bases and quarterbacks, and I went through this early in my career covering the Buffalo Bills with Trent Edwards. Man, that was crazy. Trent Edwards had a couple of good games for the Buffalo Bills. They started out like 5-2 or something like that. And he was fine. It wasn't like megastar. He was fine. And they were convinced that it was the next Jim Kelly. It was the next great Buffalo Bills quarterback. He was going to be a superstar. He was going to take them to the promised land. And you couldn't pry that out of their cold, dead hands until a year later, when it became very clear. And, even with EJ Manuel, the way that whole thing went down where they benched him for Kyle Orton, it was the same sort of thing. Like, he had his defenders. Tyrod Taylor had his defenders for a very long time when they drafted Josh Allen, right? So that was a quarterback-starved franchise that had been waiting for a long time. And the same thing went for the Bears, where they wanted it so bad to work out. And it's the same kind of thing here where, when McCarthy comes in with as much hype and as much excitement as anything that I've seen. I mean, last year, every single, post-practice podcast was getting huge viewership. Everybody wants to know, how's McCarthy looking and everything else. How about after the first night of the season? The comeback win, the locker room scene. I mean, it's gotten memed to death, and all that. Maybe that was in Detroit is the meme, but look, I mean, he was as excited and pumped up, and everybody, the fan base and everything else. I mean, I can't imagine what our podcast sounded like after that. Like, wow, this is like, welcome to the NFL, JJ McCarthy. That was crazy, right? And then he gets the injury, and then it never really materializes in the second half of the season. And then you get some of the Kevin O'Connell stuff, the weird hand injury thing, pulling himself out of the game, the more injuries, and it all kind of comes apart. But there was that promise that was there, and the first impression was very good for JJ McCarthy. His training camp was very good. It's not like there's nothing that we've ever seen that would indicate that he could be good. And that was sort of like you're saying with Fields, where Fields had his moments and he was pretty good. And I think those people that are, the hardcore JJ McCarthy's going to make it people, that come on to the internet and just trash Kyler Murray because I guess they hope that helps JJ somehow. I don't really know what the purpose is of trashing your own quarterback for your team, but people do it. I think it's just a reaction of wanting that to work out so bad, thinking maybe there's still a chance that this comes around. And as of right now, so long as they're splitting reps, then there is a chance that JJ McCarthy still works out. And if he's with this team and Murray starts and Murray gets hurt and he's the one that they put in and not Carson Wentz, then there is still a chance. That's why I never want to write off anybody at the quarterback position, because we've just seen so many things work out. So in such a small sample size, it work out in ways that we never would have expected. Unless you guys thought that Brock Purdy was going to become a highly paid star quarterback, I don't think that anybody had that one coming. So we never really know how it's going to play out. And that may be why O'Connell is handling it this way. Maybe he just wants to push as much as he can on JJ McCarthy. And maybe he hasn't given up on JJ McCarthy and wants to get all the sample size of the reps so they know where they are starting with training camp and go from there. I don't know how they're going to handle it even the next 2 days, much less during training camp. But I also don't blame anyone for being very disappointed at the way this played out, and also believing that there's still a chance that it can end up working out, because people bought into McCarthy so much. What they said about him, calling him the franchise quarterback last year, talking about him all the time as their leader, and the way that we reported on it from training camp and everything else. I mean, going from that to this is certainly whiplash for all the people that went out and bought 9 jerseys. And I don't blame you for going out and buying a 9 jersey. BCR says, what a wonderful time to be a Vikings fan. Okay, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time. It is definitely an interesting time where we don't really know what's going to happen here. And thank you for watching. But, I mean, every day that we go out there, I don't really know, like, whether, JJ McCarthy's going to get a certain amount of reps, what Kyler Murray's going to look like, what we're going to hear from people. And with a new general manager and the fact that they're assessing every single part of this roster, it does feel like that a new day is coming for this team, but the answer is when, or the question is when. Is the new day here in Kyler Murray? Is the new day JJ McCarthy finding it and shocking all of us and becoming the starting quarterback? Like, I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen, but I'm not sure. Is the new day coming at the end of this season where they extend Kyler, move on from Kyler, have McCarthy as part of a competition because he's played well? Like, there's so much to still find out with this team. Joker says, is it too early to say if McCarthy really improved over the offseason? We would have heard about it by now. The lack of detailed quotes about where he's made obvious strides doesn't seem good. Totally. Yeah. I mean, when we talked to O'Connell, there was really nothing in terms of detail about where JJ McCarthy looks different. To my eye, it doesn't look different. It looks much more like JJ McCarthy. And he's made some good throws, and he made good throws last year. And he's made some high throws, and he's made some line drives, and that's kind of how it's always looked. I don't think that I am good enough or informed enough by the coaches and whatever else about where the ball was supposed to go on every one of these throws or how his throwing technique is supposed to look for me to be able to say, oh yeah, it's obviously right here. I would need someone to tell me, to your point. I would need O'Connell to make a point about this is where it's changed and gotten better. And based on his comments, we haven't heard anything really like that. Kit says, very curious on your thoughts on Murray's pressure. If you saw what went wrong on the 2 interceptions, that's all I've heard reported on the day overall. Yeah, I mean, that's the goofy part about like trying to report on this is that, he throws 2 interceptions. Oh my gosh. I mean, one of them is just entirely a miscommunication with the receiver, which happens all the time in the spring. And then the other one is a deep ball that sails on him a little bit and ends up getting intercepted. I guess they should cut him. Like, I mean, I don't know. I can't be sarcastic enough about trying to evaluate 2 interceptions. Like, yes, I saw what happened, that, there was a receiver running a route one way and he threw it the other way. So it was either his read or the wide receiver's read, and I don't know which one it is. I just assumed, yeah, this is why they call it the learning phase, because they're still trying to figure out how you're doing this stuff, and mistakes are going to happen. When you get to training camp, mistakes are not supposed to happen. But in 7-on-7 minicamp, I mean, yeah, that happens all the time. So as far as, the other one, I mean, it's just, they're taking some shots sometimes, and the overthrow is going to happen occasionally. I don't know. Like, there's not much you can really make of that. And then after that, it was a normal practice for Kyler Murray. I'm sure that he wasn't happy with those mistakes, but it was pretty much just your run of the mill. I mean, we didn't really even ask him about what happened because it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's pretty obvious what happened. Skull Shadow, as long as McCarthy doesn't make too much noise, there's no reason to trade him. 2 more years left on team control, and he's very young. See if he can be serviceable, at least as a high-end backup. I mean, that's the thing is whether McCarthy, when he answers that question about being traded, being a candidate to be traded, when he answers that question, he says, this is where I always wanted to be. I love this organization and everything else and my teammates. I mean, is he saying it through gritted teeth, or is this true? Like, does he really think that this can still work out? And if he does, then that's great for them. If he is thinking, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to show this team that I still should be their franchise quarterback, and even if he doesn't win the competition, he'll probably play at some point and be ready to play and ready to go, then it's really good because backups are super hard to find. And he was able to win some games for them last year. So in your worst case scenario where Kyler Murray gets hurt, you would feel like you had a backup quarterback who could at least get you over 500 or in games or, stay in games, and you don't have to play Carson Wentz. That's what you want to feel in terms of confidence. But the fact that Wentz was the better quarterback last year, I still think if it happened today, if Murray was playing and he got hurt right now, they'd probably play Wentz. But it's on McCarthy to prove that to them. Is he willing and interested in proving to them every single day, which so far I've seen no indication on the field that he isn't. Is he willing to prove to them every single day behind the scenes, in the meeting rooms, in the walkthroughs, everything else, that he is, going to do everything he possibly can to make it work with this organization? Or behind the scenes is his agent calling Nolan Teasley every day saying, congratulations on the job, but can you trade my client to Arizona? So that's what we don't know. We don't know the conversations that are going on behind the scenes. How about this for a FanDuel question of the day? I'm going to look real quick out of curiosity. What Arizona, this is the FanDuel question of the day, and it's a little bit of a goofy one, I know, but I just thought of it, and I'm kind of curious about your answers. Is Arizona's over-under win total on FanDuel is 4.5 wins. If they traded for JJ McCarthy, how many wins would they get? That's my FanDuel question of the day. If they were to do that, how many wins would they get? Okay, let me go back to your questions, because I didn't have a FanDuel question of the day. If you got a better one, throw it out there. But I thought that's interesting. Like, if that's the most obvious team to trade him to, if they did, how many games do you think that they would win this year? The over-under being 4.5. I would say 7, 6, probably 6. They've got to play in a tough division. I'd go 6. Let's see. Taslios says KOC's comments about being a good teammate is actually a Kyler who's gaslighting everyone into thinking he's being a good teammate by giving better pressers while being a bully to JJ McCarthy. That's sarcasm. Okay, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, when Kyler Murray, he strikes me as the type of guy that is a go about his own business type of person. I mean, I know that you're like being funny, but the question to O'Connell was directed specifically about JJ McCarthy when he said, you have to at least try to be a good teammate. Like, that was the direct question about McCarthy and not Kyler Murray. But with McCarthy, that's a really important part, is you do have to be a good teammate, meaning that if you're going to be a quarterback too, that you show up every single week. And we'll see. I mean, we'll see if this happens or if they believe he's ready for this or not. It means you show up every single week ready to run the scout team, and you're prepared to go in at any time. And also in the game planning process, usually the other quarterbacks, they have their roles inside of the quarterback room where you're supposed to be helping the starting quarterback. And yes, you've got Wentz, and yes, you've got Brosmer, but you can't really have somebody in a room like that who's just sitting on the other side and pouting. I mean, a lot of times they have, their own meetings and stuff with the players that are beyond just, it's not like school. These are grown men. Like they have their own meetings and they're prepared and they're looking at film and going through it with each other. And it is a joint effort to get the starting quarterback ready. So is he willing to do stuff like that? Will be factored into a decision on whether he's here or not. But yeah, just to clear that up, it wasn't at Kyler, I don't think. Mama says, I don't know how many more years of bridge quarterbacks I could take. Well, you're on it this year, and then we'll see. And this is why it is a fork in the road for the franchise, is because they have to make a decision at the end of this year. Are you going to have this as, is it a bridge quarterback? Is Kyler your franchise quarterback? Do we somehow end up on JJ McCarthy as the franchise quarterback again? Or are we going in a different direction? That is the ultimate question that will determine pretty much everybody's fate. And if you're wondering like why everyone is tense already, and it's the spring, with, O'Connell and some of his comments and McCarthy and everybody else, is because everybody knows that. And even why Nolan Teasley wasn't given too much detail about the quarterback situation, his press conference or any other interviews. Everybody knows that the way that the quarterback situation ends up figuring itself out will determine a lot about where this franchise goes into the future, because they feel, I'm sure, the same way that you do, Mama. I mean, that the years of bridge quarterbacks have really not been easy. And you're always deciding, even when Kirk was here, it was every year or 2 years, you're saying, is he still going to be the quarterback? I'm sure that they would love to not have that be the case. Joker, when is McCarthy's trade value going to be his highest? Obviously better to sell low, better than sell high than low right now. When it comes to the trade value, it would be at its absolute best if I mentioned Arizona, and that's a little tongue in cheek, but they don't have a quarterback. So, but if it was Arizona bidding against themselves and Cleveland was like, nah, we're not going to bother with that. And there was no other team that was looking to make that trade. I mean, if you're the Jets, it's probably a smart idea to make it, to just roll the dice, but they've got their starting quarterback there. And I honestly can't think of too many other teams where this would even make any sort of sense. Where the value would be the highest for JJ McCarthy is, let's say that Kyler Murray is the starting quarterback in training camp. Kyler Murray, by all reports from us, is looking good. And then they go into the preseason and McCarthy plays really well in a preseason game. And right after that, somebody's quarterback tears their Achilles. That's when it would be the highest. Because if you're looking around for potential trade options as another team, if your starter got hurt, I mean, it's Joe Flacco or JJ McCarthy. You might as well go with JJ McCarthy because Flacco's not going to get you there. Maybe it's Gardner Minshew. It's an older veteran backup. I mean, who's going to do that? So every year somebody's quarterback gets hurt, might get hurt in the early part of the season, then you would consider doing it. But that's why, for me, I think unless that comes up, unless someone's super desperate, what I would prefer them to do is just to see how this plays out and have JJ McCarthy available to them because I don't think that Carson Wentz could play more than 2 or 3 games. If Wentz got you through 2 games, that's great. And, last year we kind of saw it. Like, he got them to 2-1. That's when they needed McCarthy to come back and they needed their starting quarterback after that. Played okay in Philadelphia, had a catastrophic pick, missed some open receivers, but wasn't great. 3 to 4 games would be the absolute maximum for what you could do with Wentz. So you do need somebody that if there was a worst case scenario and Kyler Murray goes down for the year, that you could have them come in and play. That's why I've not really been in favor of just getting a 4th round draft pick unless you feel like there's no value in having McCarthy at all because he's not going to be prepared for the games. Kit says the comment on reps for Murray seemed like the same type of honest and competitive, professional, but not friendly comment as JJ's last week. I like that the fire is mutual. What JJ did last week was not the same as this. It definitely was not. This was, I just took this as an earnest answer from Kyler Murray in a matter-of-fact kind of way of this is different for me. And because you're filling in the rest of the blanks of what he actually said. JJ McCarthy came out and said he sits on one side of the room and I sit on the other side. That doesn't sound like you're being a good teammate at all. And that's the perfect way to make a bunch of waves and have every former quarterback that can get on TV talking about you. Murray's answer was much more of a, yeah, it's been a little bit of a challenge here because I'm not used to splitting reps. And you're filling in the rest which we are, of course, of like, hey, these obviously not thrilled about that, but he's pointing out that it's different. But I didn't take that as being the same. No, I don't think it's the same type of thing. I thought that one person gave an earnest answer to the question, and their honesty allows us to say Kyler wants his reps and wants the starting quarterback reps, but we're making our opinion of what he's really trying to say there versus what was directly said by JJ McCarthy. So I do think it's a little bit different. Joker says if Ty Felton is a good receiver, who will play special teams? Yeah. Well, they'll find somebody. Mama, any good Miles Price action seen today? Actually, yes. Miles has been quite involved as a wide receiver. And I am curious if they see Miles Price as someone who can be a legitimate wide receiver option for them. He was doing a lot of the kick returning today and punt returning, as you would expect when they were doing those things. But he has been quite involved as a wide receiver. And the other guy that stood out a little bit is Dante Fleming. Dante Fleming has taken a lot of reps out there. He was a undrafted free agent last year, had some good moments in training camp, some good moments in the preseason. He's a speedster, somebody that I'll be keeping an eye on. But if they could get Miles Price to be the Brandon Powell, like undersized guy who goes over the middle and gets some yak, even if you get 15 of those catches, it's more than you've gotten in the past. And I think that they are developing a much more versatile, with these two guys, with Felton and Miles Price, a much more versatile, potentially attack than they've had in the past. And even Juwan Jennings is so much different than what Jalen Naylor was. So it does have a little bit more juice to it if those guys end up working out. But Price has looked good to me so far. Joker says Murray's comment about the lack of reps was professionally done. When should he actually start getting all the reps? To me, tomorrow is fine. But if not, then the first day of training camp, sometimes, the first couple days of training camp are kind of like mini camp. We get so excited. Training camp starting. Here we go. And then they don't have pads on. It's like, yeah, they didn't do that much today physically, and we can't really judge it, but training camp's here, that kind of thing. But in terms of like when he should start getting all the reps, I mean, now a clock is probably fine just considering the situation. But it really truly depends on whether Kevin O'Connell wants to go through this all the way to an ending point, whether he has a date set of, I don't know, like August 23rd is when he wants to name a starting quarterback. I mean, does he want that? Or is it evaluate them in the spring, see who has, you can't really do a command of the offense because it's very hard to expect a new quarterback to be completely locked into the offense. So what are you really judging it on? Are you judging it on projecting how much Kyler will get figured out by the start of training camp? Is it judging it on their throwing, or is it just Kyler Murray's the starting quarterback and you're giving JJ McCarthy every opportunity to show you how dialed in he is and how he shows up prepared for practice every day, and you want to give him those reps? Or are you doing it because you want to trade him? Like, these are certainly the questions that I have, but at the latest, it should be the first day of training camp where Kyler Murray is QB1 if he's going to be your starting quarterback, because I don't really see the purpose of going through a back and forth during the entire training camp unless you really think that JJ McCarthy has a chance to overtake Kyler Murray. If it is the situation that I've always thought it is, which is, yeah, it's a race, but it's a race where one guy's at the pole position and the other guy's in 37th place. If that's not right, if that's not true, then we'll find that out. And then you're going to split reps and decide deep into training camp. But I think given all the circumstances, given all the players' past histories, given the skill sets, given how Kyler throws the football, you should probably start doing it tomorrow or just when you get to training camp. Kit, Felton stepping up would make things very interesting contract-wise for Addison in his future. I don't know if Felton, and maybe he will, I don't know if Felton has the potential to be good enough to threaten that. Addison is a special talent. He is a wide receiver one in a lot of places, or some places, maybe a third of the league. He's the best receiver they have. Certainly would be in Arizona, which I mentioned. So Addison is a first-round pick. He is exceptional. The route running is spectacular. The contested catch stuff. He's really one of the best wide receiver twos in the NFL. You'd say he's probably top 3 or 4 in the entire league. So I would not say that Felton has the potential to get there where you're saying, all right, yeah, it's totally cool that we let Jordan Addison go because Felton is here. I look at Felton as much more of a role-playing wide receiver with very good speed who could get the ball in his hands and make plays. So more of a wide receiver 3 of the future than wide receiver 2. But if it's some sort of less defined role and it's, all right, Jennings is going to play 60% of snaps and they're going to have 2 tight ends on, 20% of snaps. And then they're going to use Ty Felton on 10% or 15%. And they're just going to mix and match. And Felton's going to come in to run a clear out or a deep shot, or Felton's going to come in to run a bubble screen or something. or maybe Miles Price as well. I like that idea of versatility, and then we see where it goes. I don't know that you can make a decision because they clearly just love the heck out of Jordan Addison. So I don't know if you can make a decision even eventually based on Felton unless he took a huge step forward. If it's just he becomes a player that you can use, then I don't think that that's going to necessarily impact Jordan Addison. Last Samurai, biggest fear about the quarterback situation is that they will pay Kyler a bunch of money out of fear of another Darnold situation, and then we get stuck with another good, not great quarterback a la Kirk. Yes, I mean, that should always be your fear. The only thing I can say on the other side is that if you look around the NFC, a lot of the teams have paid their quarterbacks. I mean, Los Angeles is paying their quarterback a lot. Seattle paid their quarterback a lot. The Philadelphia Eagles have extended their QB. The Green Bay Packers have. The Detroit Lions have. I mean, these are teams. I mean, the Lions didn't make the playoffs last year, but these are teams that are in the playoffs and very competitive despite that. You can do it in 2026. You can't do it in 2018 when you give a fully guaranteed contract that is basically a boulder that is immovable. You could work out a contract with Kyler Murray that has flexibility to it and is movable, and you can build through the draft, which is why Nolan Teasley is here. And you can, I mean, they just traded for freaking Myles Garrett when they've paid and extended multiple times Matthew Stafford. It is most certainly not impossible. Is it favorable? Yes. But I think the part that you mentioned is that don't worry about the pay part as much, because we've seen this. And Seattle won the Super Bowl with a quarterback that they signed in free agency for a pretty darn big amount of money. It wasn't max money, but it was a good chunk. Don't worry so much about that. The part that should be more worrisome is the good, not great part. That there is a bar that is set that you have to match in order to be a Super Bowl contender of quarterback play. If you do not reach that bar, you will not go deep in the playoffs almost ever from a historical perspective. The bar is like Matt Ryan was in a Super Bowl and Brock Purdy is in a Super Bowl and Jalen Hurts. These are good quarterbacks. Are they great quarterbacks? Probably not. I don't expect to see Brock Purdy make the Hall of Fame, or Jalen Hurts. I guess could be interesting if he wins another Super Bowl sometime because they're such a good franchise. But even then, I don't know. In the NFC, historically, the bar has been high, but it has not been the roof. In the AFC, when you've had Brady and Roethlisberger and Manning, and then now you have Lamar and Mahomes, and now Drake May shows up and he's an instant superstar. It's just different. So there's a break there for you that a lot of these teams, if you were to do a one-on-one comparison of, hey, Kyler Murray, and just even statistical, but include the running, Kyler Murray versus Dak Prescott. Dak's a little better, but is he wildly better? Kyler Murray versus Jordan Love. Now, I think Love was really good last year, but for his career so far, I might go Jordan Love by a little bit, but it's not crazy. It's not a huge difference. Jalen Hurts, if Kyler Murray is the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles in 2024, he's got a Super Bowl ring. He's winning that Super Bowl, right? Because I think Kyler Murray is better than Jalen Hurts, even though I like Hurts and respect him a lot. Is Kyler Murray, better than Sam Darnold? Probably not, but he does things that Sam Darnold doesn't do with his legs. I mean, can in the right circumstances, he be as good as these quarterbacks have been in a given season? He did prove that at one point in his career and recently has played very well. So in 2024, so it's not insane that, Kyler Murray could perform well enough if you can build the rest of the roster around him. Right now, I don't think they're at that point, but could they be with one additional player? Could they be with another draft class if this one works out? Because this has a lot of defensive players. I think that, it's not impossible. But if he's only just good enough to get them to 9 or 10 wins, then it doesn't really matter what he's being paid. It's just not good enough. And that's what I don't really know. I mean, so far he hasn't been good enough, but it's only for the Arizona Cardinals. And when we said that about Sam Darnold, well, he just can't win the playoffs. He's not good enough. The guy went and won the Super Bowl for somebody else. And it should scare them. It should scare them that they made this catastrophic mistake, and they should keep that in mind as they go forward with Kyler Murray. But that doesn't mean you have to overpay him. Who was holding for Will Reichard? Johnny Hekker. I mean, Johnny Hecker's very likely to be the punter. But, Brett Thorson, if he could prove that he can hold, yeah, maybe he's got a chance. Teasley should sign Reichard to a 10-year, $100 million contract, Evan. In fact, I think the Wilfs maybe made a mistake that he hasn't done that yet. Let's see. Ryan, you're at the Lynx game while throwing your question in, which I have a ton of respect for. Hopefully you go back and find that I did answer this. Do you have any thought on how the safety room is looking? The benefit of the safety room, and I actually have a comment from Brian Flores that I didn't play about Harrison Smith, so I'll just play you that as well. But in terms of the safety room, all three guys know what they're doing. They've all been here for several years. They've developed, and I mean, what their ceiling is, I think, is a question. How good can a fourth rounder, a guy that they got off somebody else's practice squad, and a sixth rounder, like how good can these guys really be as a trio when you don't have any freakishness there? You don't have Harrison Smith's freaky brain and playmaking ability, and you don't have Nick Eamon-Ware's freaky size. You have three guys who are smart football players who have developed a lot in this system, who can make plays at the right times. The ceiling might not be that high. It might not have to be. They might be able to be just serviceable, and the front seven is good, and the corners are good, and the defensive mind is phenomenal. And at that point, you feel like you can survive it. But I think that the room would be better with Harrison Smith. But let me get you Brian Flores on Harrison Smith not being here.
I'd love to have him back. I've told him that many times already. But at the same time, we got a good group. They're really working hard and doing a lot of really good things, and collectively, filling those shoes, I would say. And so, excited for that group, and they're doing really well.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to put it, is collectively, because I don't know that you can make the roles just static and say, all right, well, Jay Ward, you're doing this, Josh Metellus, you're doing this, and then we're all set. I don't think you can really do that. I think that it's going to have to be a moving parts approach. I also feel like there's a chance that Harrison Smith is coming back. I just don't think it's going to be soon. If we should do a Harry-O-meter, right? Smith-O-meter probably works better, but Hitman meter is probably better. Like where I feel like it's at right now in the Hitman meter, I would lean like 65% that he plays for the Minnesota Vikings this year. Just that no one has counted it out. No one has said, yeah, I don't think he's going to play this year, or even indicated that. And you get a little bit of this, well, he could come back during the season. I don't know, from O'Connell last week. It feels like Harry's going to get the itch, and during middle of training camp or even start of training camp, he's going to come back. But they got to work out a contract for him. I think that the excitement over getting Kyler Murray here, and also like a new look defense. He's really loved playing for Brian Flores. I think he could play for Brian Flores through the end of time, because he's just enjoyed that intellectual challenge so much. So I think that old Harry is going to feel the need to get back on the football field at some point. But why would you do it now in June? If you were with your family and you're working out and you're staying in shape and everything else, you don't need to be doing little drills and little 7-on-7s or whatever. You're Harrison Smith. You could show up anytime, anywhere, and play. So that's kind of where I stand on it right now. Last Samurai, I used to think we would see a quarterback worse than Ponder play for the Vikings, but JJ proved me wrong. I'm overall sad about the quarterback situation right now. I don't know that you need to be sad about the quarterback situation right now, because I think that when we look at Kyler Murray's history and where he's played and what he's done at his best, there is an opportunity for this team to get good enough quarterback play to make things interesting in the NFC North. And there's a good enough chance as any as Kyler Murray turning into the quarterback who is here for multiple years and you're building around. last year was a nightmare with JJ McCarthy. And if he improves in the right ways during training camp and he's mastering the offense and they feel really good about him, there is always a scenario that could work out that they don't love what they saw from Kyler, and you end up with JJ McCarthy getting some playing time during the season, and it's a quarterback competition into the future. But, I think that it's sad might not be the way I would describe Vikings fans. It's probably be more like malaise. I think that if you hadn't seen this story so many times as Vikings fans, where a quarterback shows up here that's sort of somebody else's discarded QB, and it doesn't feel like the guy is ever really your quarterback that you drafted and developed and was here for 10 years and everything. When you've seen it so many times and it's flashes in the pan, it's 1 year, it's one playoff game, one playoff win, whatever it might be, then I think it's like bored with this motif, really, is what it is. Like, oh, you've seen this story before and you can sort of simulate it in your mind, but you never know what's going to happen in the NFL. That's for sure. Sam Darnold won the Super Bowl last year, and I don't think if you told somebody that 2 years ago, they would have thought you were sane. So I always want to see these things play out because I just know how much circumstances can impact players, and I know how unpredictable it is. I love NFL history, love going through, watching old playoffs and everything else. I mean, the number of times where something has happened that we totally did not expect. I mean, think about Seattle. Seattle was criticized for drafting Russell Wilson. Why would you pick a quarterback in the third when you just signed Matt Flynn? I mean, we truly know nothing until they get out there. So, when you see this happen time and time again, you sort of roll your eyes. I'm like, all right, here we are again, kind of hoping and praying that either a quarterback who played really bad as a first-round draft pick magically turns it around and is a totally different quarterback, or a guy who another team let go is great because you have the wide receivers and the coaching. It's not something that has got them a Super Bowl. It's not something that's gotten them that many wins. So you have every right to say, yeah, I just can't be excited about this. I do think that the minute that Kyler Murray gets out in the field and you see him play and you see the quickness, the mobility, the accuracy, if he starts out week one and plays really well, it might change. It might change how you feel. But what I hope it doesn't turn into is what happened in 2024. And I know how it ended, but during that season, I felt like a lot of fans, because of the boredom with somebody else's quarterback showing up and doing well, or a backup showing up and doing well, that there wasn't really a full appreciation for the fun of that season until almost the very end. And then, of course, as tends to happen in Vikings history, you were deeply disappointed. Joker said Metellus said that Harry texted him and said, it's your safety room now, but it was kind of putting words in his mouth situation, not changing my opinion that Harry will come back. Okay, well, thanks for that. I didn't see that interview. I was over talking with Flores at the time that some other guys were coming off the field, so I didn't see what Josh Metellus said, but I mean, if Harrison Smith does not come back, then it is Josh Metellus's, and he's the guy that's going to be doing those things, calling all the plays defensively and so forth. And if Harrison Smith decides that he's not going to play this year, then, I mean, what a career, Hall of Fame caliber career. I don't know if he'll get in. I really hope the Hall of Fame changes this crazy standard that they have set where they want to put as few people into a museum for those who love football. Just very bizarre to me. Like, it's a museum to celebrate the best football players, and you want less people to be celebrated. Okay, that doesn't really work for me, but that's fine, I guess. I'm not a part of that whole conversation. But he's put together a Hall of Fame caliber career, and it was magical at the end of last year. It really was, to see him get picks and knock down passes and blitz and make plays at the age he's at for as long as he's done it. And it's kind of pure will and intelligence and love for football. Like that's what it's happening on. It's not happening on pure athleticism, that's for sure. And then to see how emotional he was, to see how much he cares about Vikings fans, to see how much he cares about football, it was really special. If that's the way it's over, then that's a great way to end for Harrison Smith. Where you would like it is, and maybe this is what he's waiting for, where you'd like it is if Harrison Smith waited to see what the team was doing. And if they're 6-2, but they're struggling at one of the safety positions or there's injuries, and then he comes back and he takes one last shot at it, that would be all right. Does that exactly work out? Like, I don't know. Oak Dog says if JJ McCarthy is QB1 by midseason, the Vikings are playing for a high draft pick. Well, it would be, yes, if they've benched, right? If they've benched JJ McCarthy, or I'm sorry, Kyler Murray, or he's gotten injured, your chances of even making the playoffs with the other teams in the division having Jared Goff and Jordan Love and Caleb Williams, your chances go down significantly that you're making the playoffs if JJ McCarthy has to play. Where I think that you'd be in at least much better shape than a lot of other teams is if Kyler went down for like 3 or 4 weeks and McCarthy is your backup quarterback and you feel good enough about him to play him, you could win 3 out of 4 games if he plays well. He could change, the narrative a little bit about him. He could change the viewpoint about him if he came in and was prepared. I remember thinking this about Sam Howell. Like if you remember with the Sam Howell thing, but the reason that I didn't love the idea of the Vikings acquiring Sam Howell is kind of like, all right, whatever. They're all in on JJ, so that's fine. It turned out I was wrong. It was not fine. Like they needed to have someone else who was a veteran there. But I remember a game where Geno Smith got hurt for Seattle and Sam Howell came in and just didn't look prepared. He looked like a guy who thought, I have no chance of going in. I don't care about this, and didn't know where to go with the football, looked totally lost. And then we've seen Malik Willis, who is to me the poster boy for patience with JJ McCarthy, come in and take over and run the offense and look great. And like that's a good example of a guy being ready, proving himself, and eventually getting his opportunity. Like he should be following along with that. So I don't think it has to guarantee. If Murray has played so poorly that he's benched, then yeah, you probably are playing more for the high draft pick, but you'd also be trying to play for like whether you want to keep JJ McCarthy here. That is assuming that he continues to be here. 72 MRJ as of 6'9". Happy 6'9 to everybody. If you had to make a prediction, who's QB 1, 2, and 3? As of this moment, I would probably say it's Kyler Murray, Carson Wentz, and JJ McCarthy 1, 2, and 3. That's as of this moment. Because being a backup quarterback is more than just having the most talent at the moment, which, McCarthy has at this point in their careers, more talent than Carson Wentz does. But if you were asking who I would trust with the offense to go out and do enough to win them a game, it's probably Wentz, because McCarthy has just been so erratic, and 7-on-7s in June have not changed my mind from what I watched for an entire season last year with the erratic nature of JJ McCarthy. But I do think that by the middle of training camp, I might change that answer. If he's playing well enough, I might change that answer to, well, I would trust McCarthy more. And I, at this moment, would want to see McCarthy more than I would want to see Wentz, because I would want to find out. And McCarthy, with his playmaking, does he give you a better chance to win or not? Because he could also turn those plays into, big turnovers and sacks. So did Wentz. But I'm thinking of it through KOC's perspective of which guy got the football to Justin Jefferson. And that is going to be hard to erase out of your mind until you start to see that in training camp and you can really point to real progress, not the learning phase where there's no pressure and they're just dropping back. So I would still lean on what we saw from last year for that answer right now, and feel free to, change my mind. Joker said, if it was known that Kyler Murray was going to be our quarterback in 2026 during our win streak at the end of the season, would people be saying, watch out, like they were saying about the Lions in 2022 with their win streak? If they were against, Detroit was a pretty good team, but they missed the playoffs. It was against all teams that missed the playoffs, right? The Giants fired everybody. The Giants had fired most of their staff by the time they played them. And the Packers, when you say it's a 5-game win streak, it was more like a 4, because the last one was a exhibition against the Packers. They're playing who was it? Clayton Tune? My God, you'll never forget where you were when Clayton Tune took the Green Bay Packers to a horrendous performance against the Vikings. So that one doesn't really count. Washington had really melted at that point. They were a terrible team. They drafted, 7th overall. Dallas missed the playoff. It's all wins against no playoff teams. I think where it really drives you crazy last year is the fact that if you could just get one more win somewhere, anywhere on that schedule, eke one out against Atlanta or whatever, that, man, the end of the season would have just been phenomenal. Like, you're just running through these teams and getting into the playoffs. But that was not the case. I don't know that people would have said that because this is not a team on the rise. With Detroit, they had all those draft picks. So when they did that at the end of 2022, it was like, oh, but this is not that team. Like, this team is a bunch of proven players. This year, we're going to see more youth on the defensive line. And, Donovan Jackson, also a young player, but especially, Dallas Turner, Caleb Banks, Dominique Orange. It's a lot of youth on the defensive line. So there's a little bit of that, but I don't view it as quite the same. I don't think any team that just finishes the season strong. And also people are still saying that about Murray. They're saying like, hey, this team won 9 games with abominable quarterback play. Like, if he's even average, they should be pretty good. But I also don't think that you can copy and paste last year to this year. Like, you can't just assume that everything is going to go the same exact way in your favor. The Vikings had the best kicking in the NFL, kicker and punter, best kicker and punter combination in the entire league last year. I have no doubts about Reichard, but the punting was a difference maker last year. And even though they got people hurt in the early part of the season, the corners stayed healthy for the entire year, and Hargrave and Allen got it figured out the second half of the season. They completely dominated. Like, I don't know. Like, you just never know how things are going to play out. So you can't just say, well, they did this last year, but you could see the logic to it, that if you're bringing back most of the team from last year and the same defensive coordinator who we weren't sure was going to be here, who has clearly elevated this team, and you add a very good wide receiver, there's every reason to think that if Kyler Murray plays reasonably well, that you should contend for the NFC North. Oak Dog says, seems like people think Murray's knee is an issue. Is there any truth to that? I don't know. Did someone say something? Was there a report? Because he went through the entire practice today and looked fine. So I don't know. It was a foot last year. So I haven't heard anything about a knee. I guess I'll have to look for that. Skull says, Skull Shadow, I thought McCarthy's answer to the trade question was very good, especially the last part where he said, everything that's happened, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Dude wants the smoke. Yeah, I mean, or just sort of like was prepared for the question since it's been a lot of the conversation. I don't know what he really wants. I don't know if he wants to get the heck out of town, or if he thinks he's going to win the quarterback competition, or if he, like last week, certainly didn't seem that way. And Kyler Murray just didn't show any indication of thinking he has any chance to lose the quarterback competition. So I don't really know. I mean, it's a good enough answer by JJ McCarthy, and he should be happy that he went in front of all the cameras and answered all the questions in a professional manner today. And sometimes you have to learn from your mistakes with JJ McCarthy, and that's important. And this was learning from a mistake. Last week was a mistake. So now you're learning from it. That's good. And hopefully that's happening on the field for his improvement, right? That the mistakes that were made last year, you're looking at them closely, you're building on them. And sometimes we just go too far with everything, right? Like we talked about it, and Dane used the phrase "miss the mark" when it came to his press conference. I said not exactly the crime of the century, but what I would transfer it to is this your attitude? Because if it is, I don't think that's going to help you. That was my point about what happened last week. But you can learn from your mistakes and you can improve on them. And that's what JJ McCarthy really has to do. So I thought that that's what he did today. And he has to do that for a lot of things that happened last year. But if you don't ever think you made a mistake, then you're bound to continue to repeat those mistakes. Taslios, if KOC has more faith in McCarthy than people think, this could be fully legit, but the chances are the competition will end by the preseason games. Right. I mean, that's in the most aggressive scenario. I was expecting today to see nothing but Kyler Murray. And then we saw a split rep situation as we've seen through OTAs. Now, Murray's taken the first reps most of the time, where when they go out, like he's the first one to go out with the team, and then it will be McCarthy. I don't know what to make of that. But if he does have more belief than he has indicated, like let's keep this in mind too, that O'Connell's the one that said the timelines changed, when it came to McCarthy, but maybe he feels like he likes what he's seen so far during this. I don't know what he's thinking, because Kevin O'Connell knows every play that's sent in, and he knows it frontward and backward in his brain. I don't know what play he sent in when they run a 7-on-7 or a 3/4 speed 11-on-11 play. I don't know. He didn't come over and show me the play. So he knows that. He knows if the quarterback threw the ball to the place that he was supposed to throw the ball to. He knows the timing of the play because he designed it. So he knows how many steps. He knows where the receiver is supposed to be. He knows whether the technique has changed. I'm not at these practices standing right next to JJ McCarthy, and I would need Kevin O'Connell to show me this is what we want McCarthy to be doing with his feet on this play, and this is what we like, right? So if he's I think he's throwing the ball fine during this spring. It hasn't looked different to me. I think it's fine. But if there are details that they really like, and the attitude is much different than he showed the first time up at the podium, and they feel like he's really locked into the offense and it's been great, well, maybe that's why, then it could be just possibly why they're still splitting reps. And it could carry over into training camp, because he kind of had to prove to the coaching staff that you deserve to split reps all the way through the spring and then into training camp. I wouldn't assume any of that, but it's at least possible that that's what they're seeing. Like, hey, you've got to prove step 1 and then get into training camp and prove step 2. I tend to think that in training camp, the early part, we might see some split reps. And then as soon as the pads come on, it's going to be all Kyler Murray. That would be my guess. But if it continues to go on, then things suddenly become very interesting. And as you know, this is always the rule of the show, right? Is when the information changes, then the takes are going to change. I'm not going to plant any flags and just stick to something forever. You know that. So if, JJ McCarthy is looking really good, and because right now for us to try to make assessments is very difficult. But if McCarthy does get a very fair shot and performs really well, then this all of a sudden becomes a totally different thing we're talking about. But I feel like that's a really far way off, considering that we've seen them play real football. And we also thought after McCarthy's joint practice with the Patriots that he was going to be in the MVP running, and Drake May was going to be going 4-13, and Drake May went to the Super Bowl, and the Vikings have Kyler Murray here. So even making too much out of training camp practices, guilty as charged, is maybe not the best thing either. Mama says if Kyler throws some INTs in practice, I'll give him a slide. It's just practice. If McCarthy throws INTs, it's unforgivable. And Kizback says 2 interceptions in 7-on-7 is pretty bad. I truly cannot tell you in strong enough language how little it means that Kyler Murray threw 2 interceptions, especially when one was just a miscommunication. Not at this phase. There are times that at a certain phase in training camp where if they were throwing a lot of interceptions, you'd be like, oh my gosh, what is going on? But let me tell you a quick tale. Let me tell you a quick story about why a lot of this stuff is just not that relevant. I'll tell you the tale of a hot day in 2022, late August. The Vikings held a practice, not on their normal practice field, but in the little stadium, the beautiful little stadium there, where they do the night practice and where flag football teams play and the soccer team. It's incredible, beautiful place. And Kirk was running a practice, 2022, and he threw 5 interceptions. 5. It was atrocious. And he walked off the field kind of crestfallen at how practice had gone. and was really upset. We talked to him, and it was just, what the heck is going on? And then in week 1, Kirk Cousins played great, and they beat the Green Bay Packers in Kevin O'Connell's first game, and they won 13 that season. So you cannot convince me. Now, the accumulation of a training camp, sure, we could get a feeling, we could get a vibe, and I would still argue that if J.J. McCarthy hadn't gotten hurt week 2, that maybe he clicks in a little bit more and makes a lot more progress. During training camp, yes, you can start to get a feeling for how things are going to go. A lot of circumstances went into what happened, but a 7-on-7 minicamp, I am telling you, when Kirk was the quarterback, I was like looking over at the backup corners to see, what do I think of Dwight McGlothern over there? I mean, I wouldn't even really watch what Kirk was doing. If he threw a pick, I'd be like, I don't care. What the, he's the starting quarterback. He's learning the offense. Who gives a crap? So, I mean, if McCarthy, and also, by the way, McCarthy, if he threw an interception a couple weeks ago, I didn't say, oh my gosh, McCarthy's toast. Like, it was very clear from day one who's better at throwing the football, but we already knew that. Like, that wasn't something we just found out. Aaron says, any other positions that you could see them adding a veteran besides outside linebacker? Good to hear that Demings is looking good. Hopefully they won't have to sign a veteran like Fabian Moreau. Reminds me of a podcast I did last year that was one of my highest performing shows of the year that was about Fabian Moreau signing, and I have no idea why still. Demings has looked good to me. I've been impressed with his ability to play the football, his movement skill. Also, a lot of, I meant to mention this, but it slipped my mind, was a lot of Bo Richter out there. And look, I'll admit it. I'm a Bo leaver. But no, seriously, like, I think Bo Richter is an interesting player to keep an eye on. And yes, they're just putting guys in outside linebacker, I think, as placeholders until they sign someone. I assume that, certain guys that are veterans don't want to show up, or maybe they want to see how it works out with Ingram Dawkins, Chambliss, and Richter. The interesting thing about Bo Richter is he's been a close to dominant special team player. I mean, he's been really, really good on special teams. And if you look at his athletic profile, because he came from Air Force and was an undrafted free agent, you'd expect like, oh, I guess he's like a try-hard, right? Not really. He actually has kind of a freaky athletic profile. I'm not saying that he's going to start over Dallas Turner, but do I like the idea a little bit of sort of rolling the ball out there and seeing who steps up in terms of the depth players like Ingram Dawkins, Chambliss, Richter, Tyler Batty, had a pretty good training camp last year. I mean, I'm kind of interested to see how that works out. Not that, undrafted free agents, it's a hard road, but sometimes you find a diamond in the rough. If you don't feel a ton of pressure to sign someone right away, I still think they will, but I'd be at least intrigued to watch that on a daily basis. Hans says, still don't understand what is telling the media it's not a competition. I mean, Hans, or Hans? Sorry if it's Hans. What is telling us it's not a competition is that they signed Kyler Murray, a veteran starting quarterback who's very good. That would be the reason. And there you have it. So, I mean, if you wanted to have an even competition, you would have gotten like Geno Smith, or do you bring in Kirk or somebody else that would have been real competition? This is a real starting quarterback who's been very good during his career versus someone who ranked 42nd in quarterback rating last year and had more interceptions than touchdowns and the same number of sacks as Sam Darnold in 1/3 of the dropbacks. I mean, what are we talking about here? That's the reason. And also because Kyler Murray likely had multiple options of where he was going to go, and he wasn't going to sign somewhere where he's not going to be the starter. So those things, and the fact that it was reported by Albert Breer that KOC told Murray that he's got a chance to be a multi-year starter for this team. Like, I don't know, like the way that McCarthy was talked about by KOC always since like the second half of last year. I mean, there's a lot of evidence here, man. A lot of evidence. The fact that Murray was the 12th best quarterback in the league in 2024, and O'Connell at the combine said that they need to reach a certain baseline of quarterback play, and they believe that they can be a dangerous team if they do. And here's a guy who reaches it. All those things, probably. Skull Shadow, as bad as McCarthy was, let's not expect Murray to be so much better. Darnold and Cousins are way different quarterbacks than Murray. Could be that Kyler doesn't look good. Need to expect that too. No, I don't. I mean, I don't look at it that way. This is probably because I've just watched a ton of Kyler Murray tape over the summer and spring. I guess it's not technically summer yet. Over the spring and winter, since they signed Kyler Murray, I've watched a ton of his tape. I've talked to a dozen people about him. That are connected in some way to him. And I'm pretty confident that he's going to be very good in this offense. Now, is it going to be the same as Darnold and Cousins? No, because those are very different quarterbacks. But you have to, at least project a little here that this guy has by far, by 50 miles, the best situation that he's ever had. And 2021 is the closest, where they have DeAndre Hopkins, and the first half of the season, their offense is getting some people, and he played spectacular football. So other than 2021, which is a good situation there in Arizona, but I mean, when you talk about weapons, you talk about the franchise, you talk about the coaching staff, everything. I mean, this is number one for him. So, it's possible that he doesn't play well. It's possible that it goes completely bust. But I think from at least any process that we would use to project, I remember being in favor of the Sam Darnold situation because I said, have you seen Carolina? Have you seen the Jets? Do you understand that Robbie Anderson was the best receiver? I mean, Michael Wilson is probably the best wide receiver that this guy has had. No disrespect. I think Michael Wilson's okay, but that's the best receiver he's had since DeAndre Hopkins. Michael Wilson, he wouldn't be wide receiver 3 on this team. It would still be Juwan Jennings. So that's a big difference. I think it's fair to project. Kisback, if McCarthy threw 2 interceptions, you'd making a big deal. Actually, he did. Well, I don't know if it was 2. It was at least 1, and had some bad throws the other day. And not really. No, not really. Because the question with any of these things, and also one is just a miscommunication. I mean, if JJ McCarthy threw a pick today, there was a miscommunication, I'd be like, okay. I mean, it's all 7-on-7. It doesn't really change my mind. All the first OTA did for us was confirm Kyler Murray, can really throw the football, and JJ McCarthy's still a work in progress, which again, we already knew this. And yes, if McCarthy has a catastrophic practice, which Murray did not, it was literally one bad pass. If we don't count a miscommunications, one bad pass from Kyler Murray. But even if it was a catastrophic 7-on-7, I'd be like, I don't know. What do you want me to do? The guy has played 60 games in his career? You want me to judge him off this? Of course not. And the other guy has played 10 games in his career, and it's as bad as anybody who's been drafted in the first round in their first 10 games. So you really want me to use the 7-on-7 practice, the pajama party, as Dan Campbell called it? Is that how you want me to judge this? I don't think that would be very rational. I mean, if you want me to do it that way, it would be like a good comedy bit. That would be a good comedy bit. If I created another YouTube channel where all I did was make fun of how ridiculous we are about football, and maybe I had a table that I could pound and just be like, he threw 2 interceptions at 7-on-7. I am done. It's actually a really good idea. That could be very funny. Purple Kool-Aid, if the Vikings know they're not considering JJ, they need to give Kyler the reps. You can't cost him learning the offense to try to save face. I agree with you. I think that he should be getting all of the reps and not worrying about what it looks like there could be some element of this. Kyler said today that if you're a quarterback, you really don't just check out from the middle of June to the start of training camp. You're going to keep working, right? If you're a quarterback. I mean, the players go on vacations. They take a week or 2 off or whatever, but they're preparing for what they got to do. But a quarterback never sleeps, right? So maybe part of this would be that if you're Kevin O'Connell and we're not doing the trade thing, let's just say that that's not really happening. If you're Kevin O'Connell, here's what you want is let's give them both the reps. Then let's make an assessment as a total coaching staff. and then we'll kind of decide where we stand going into training camp. But you want JJ McCarthy pushing as hard as he can over the next number of weeks because he had time after the season, but you also have time now to try and make as much improvement as you possibly can. So have him as motivated as possible going into training camp and see where they're at the beginning of training camp. Give him every opportunity to make this interesting. That might be the way Kevin O'Connell is viewing it. Give him every opportunity to make things interesting. And the fact that Kyler is a veteran quarterback, yes, it's different for him. He was honest about that today in a professional manner. He didn't say, I can't stand that this kid's getting reps or whatever, but, he said that like it's been a little more challenging than he's had in the past, just pointing out the difference. So if you feel like McCarthy showed up to training camp, boy, he is just built on everything that he did in OTAs, and he's locked into the offense right away for training camp and the non-padded parts of it, then maybe you say, all right, let's see if this gets interesting. I could see that reasoning. I don't think that that's what's going to happen, and I think they should just give Kyler Murray all the reps in minicamp. I also don't think it'll make any difference whatsoever when we get to the real season, how they've done this. Yeah, Purple Kool-Aid, we're not talking about a game. That's right. Son of Beavers, I'm just waiting for the Cooper Rush signing to hit the presses. Not going to worry about trades. That's funny. Raw Dog, I feel like the reaction to Murray stating that he isn't getting reps from most is disingenuous, even though it's valid and true. The reaction has been different, would be different if McCarthy said that like a whining complaint. Well, it was a very different comment from what McCarthy said. I don't know. I don't think there's any double standard at all. I really don't. I really don't think there's any double standard at all. One guy's been a very good quarterback in the NFL. The other guy has proven absolutely nothing. And we should treat it that way. And the two press conferences, I mean, to me, this is just boredom. Honestly, it's boredom. To be talking about like, was Kyler taking a shot at someone or he was whining or he wasn't at all. I mean, do you want me to play the clip again? I mean, if you're I'm not going to, it's not worth it. Because it's not whining or complaining. He was asked directly about competing and all right, I'm going to play the clip again so I can get the exact question. No, that's not the right one. Let me get this one.
What's the toughest part as far as going from what you get to the Cardinals to here?
Okay, so he said, what was the toughest part was what he was asked. What is the toughest part? So he's being presented already with what is challenging about this, and then he answered it.
What's the toughest part as far as going from what you get to the Cardinals to here offensively?
I think the toughest part is, again, I was there for 7 years. I know I had two different, offensive systems, but at the same time, you're getting all those reps. Now having to split reps, it's me already being behind, not getting the amount of reps that, you would typically want a guy to get learning an offense. That's probably the toughest part, just, again, going back to the past, being in control of everything, understanding what we were already doing because I was comfortable within the system.
I mean, do we really have to break this down like word for word? Because to me, where's the whining? Where's the complaining? And if I asked JJ McCarthy kind of the same question and he, didn't really give an answer to that. So I guess he could have said no comment. It would have been unnecessary to say no comment. When the question is, what is the biggest challenge? And he says, well, the biggest challenge is I'm not getting every single rep. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. That is so different from what we saw from JJ McCarthy last week. So conflating the two is bizarre to me, but it's all been bizarre. Dan, why don't you press and ask KOC if Kyler is the starter? Why? You know what? I never thought of that, Dan. I never thought of it. Yes. So we have asked repeatedly about the quarterback situation. And today, an ESPN reporter was there. If you want to go find it on Twitter, I think I retweeted it or whatever. ESPN reporter asked Kevin O'Connell when he plans to name a starting quarterback, and he gave a winding answer about that was not an answer. Basically like, I know when, and you don't. So there you go. Shockingly, it's been asked, and Kevin O'Connell is not naming his starting quarterback. And if you want to go see the press conference from last week, we asked these questions. And I mean, what do you want me to do? Like, fight him. Like, I don't, sometimes I just don't understand these. Like, yes, of course, like we've continually asked about the quarterback situation, and he's answered that question in a roundabout kind of way. He's going to do it when he's going to do it. Like, why don't we ask him? Yeah, man, it's been asked. It's going to continue to be asked. And will they look to trade McCarthy? Well, that really wasn't much of a discussion, but that will probably be asked too. We're going to talk to him in 2 days. I promise you, Dan. I promise you. We will talk to him on Thursday. These questions will be asked. No one forgot to ask about the quarterback. I promise you. Tricky Ricky says, have you ever considered that this is actually a quarterback competition? Not really, no. No, honestly, no, I haven't. Because they signed a very good quarterback, and you usually wouldn't do that if you were planning on, having a real competition. You wouldn't go out and get someone that is proven. Look, here's the thing. This has been my opinion since day one. Like, you sign Kyler Murray, he's the quarterback. But if that turns out to be wrong, then that turns out to be wrong. They're splitting reps in a mini camp on June 9th. I'm not exactly convinced. Tricky Ricky. Not exactly convinced. What I could be sold on is that they want to get every look they possibly can at McCarthy. They want to assess whether they want to trade him. They want to assess if he is, QB2 or QB3. They want to assess his attitude, how he is inside of the rooms, if he's mastered the offense more and all that sort of stuff. Like, he has every right as the head coach to want to see how far along his younger quarterback has come as they're doing this. It also could be to maintain the idea that they could potentially trade him, because if you give him QB3 reps, then, that's not exactly sustaining the trade value. But considering that I have watched a heck of a lot of both quarterbacks, and there's no real comparison to how they've really played in actual NFL games, no, I don't really think that it's a true competition. And I know you're not being snarky. This has been my opinion since day one when they signed Kyler Murray, is that he is the starting quarterback of this team because he's, at this point in their careers, the much better quarterback. And the reasoning of the rep split, we're going to ask on Thursday. Dan won't let us forget. Trust me, it will be asked on Thursday about the reps and the performance and what's coming next and when a starting quarterback gets named and all that sort of juicy stuff. We'll definitely ask it. But, when it comes to splitting reps in a very light work mini camp practice that is in typical KOC fashion, not intense really at all, it doesn't sell me on the idea that they're going to be. Now, if we were talking about this on August 9th would be different. August 9th, if they're splitting reps on August 9th, then I will say, oh yeah, this is a real competition. When the pads come on, if they take half and half reps, then I'll say, all right, I was wrong. It's a real competition. But until then, I can't throw out since 2020, Kyler Murray has been a top 15 quarterback in the league, and not just by my metric, but also by NFL executives and coaches who have voted him there repeatedly in The Athletic when Mike Sando does his quarterback tiers. I can't just throw out 5 years of information on a quarterback and the last 2 years of information on JJ McCarthy because they split reps in a 7-on-7. So, Bruno says people were betting on which game Darnold would be benched or replaced on JJ. Yeah, last year. That just shows you how much can change. That shows you how much it can change. Absolutely. I remember having that conversation when we did the schedule release that year. We had that conversation. We said, so what week is it that we think that McCarthy's going to play? Yeah, absolutely. Purple Kool-Aid, is there going to be a fan and media freak out about Kyler's comments like we had for JJ? No, because they're not the effing same, dude. Like, what is this? I don't know. We're literate, right? Mama says this shouldn't be a real competition. McCarthy's the second worst quarterback to ever touch the field behind Ponder. I mean, Spurgeon Wynn was pretty tough, and so was Josh Freeman. Josh Freeman, probably. Last Samurai, how about the punters? I mean, Johnny Hecker's your punter, but Brett Thorson definitely can boot it from what I've seen. Can he do it in a way where it's, the right trajectory, the right location? Can he hold? But they don't have to cut Brett Thorson because he has the international exemption. Kyler is not shocked that it's a competition. He didn't seem like that at all. Some of you are having a tough time with this. You are right. A lot of practices, the ball doesn't touch the ground, but I'm certainly not going to throw out 50, 60 starts. See, there's a difference between a guy runs the wrong way and it turns into an interception versus being like completely inaccurate in a practice. There is a difference. I know you guys are smart enough for this stuff. I really do. I really give you more credit than you're showing today, some of you. Bruno, does Kyler Murray will he be behind a better offensive line than he had in Arizona? If so, he can only be better, right? In 2024, Arizona had a pretty good offensive line, and that was where I thought he played some of his best football inside of the pocket. So there's that. I think that this offensive line has a chance to be good if it stays healthy. If it stays healthy, there's a lot of talent on this offensive line. And I think Will Fries could be better than he was last year because he was dealing with that leg thing for all training camp and his recovery. And now he's had a fully healthy season and recovery. Donovan Jackson can be better, take a step forward. I like what I have seen from him, but I think that there's details that need to be improved. I think he can. And then Darisaw, this is one of the biggest developments of the offseason, is that Darisaw said he is the healthiest he's been since 2024. And KOC was very positive about where he stood. So those are big things. Aaron, will there be a Brian O'Neill extension before minicamp is over? I don't think so before minicamp is over, but I do think that there will be an extension for Brian O'Neill eventually. He is a guy that it kind of reminds me of Harrison Smith, actually, that he's a guy where I believe the Wilfs want to be a Viking for life. There are certain guys that are just really special to the team and that you don't want to ever leave. And I think Brian O'Neill is one of them. I would have some hesitation about the price tag potentially with O'Neill, the age, there's some injury history, but also, man, tackles, you just got to hang on to them. And they did draft a tackle, Caleb Tiernan, so that matters to the discussion as well. And there is an argument from Nolan Teasley's seat of, like, why should I come in and extend somebody and lock myself in to somebody who's in their 30s when I want to get a look at everybody I possibly can? So I don't know how that's going to work out. I mean, with Brian O'Neill, I think if you communicate that to him, like, this is a new general manager, he's not going to give out an extension. You should just go play and see what happens. But there could be another part of it where they say tackles are very hard to find. And if you are going to pour all of your draft assets into rebuilding the defense after this with some older players, that's the main thing that they have to think about, is how do you build the Seattle Seahawks defense, basically. I mean, if that's what you're trying to do, then, having to draft a tackle within the first 2 rounds next year, or like hoping that Caleb Tiernan, I mean, they could do that. They could hope that Caleb Tiernan shows enough to be a starter next year. Maybe that's what they do. I don't know. Because drafting a tackle does add an extra layer to this, but I also kind of thought Tiernan could eventually be a guard. So I'm not sure. I have no idea what Nolan Teasley thinks, but I think that if we were doing likelihood, the extension no meter, then I would probably go like 70% that O'Neill does get an extension. Yeah. Let's see. Wade says, how did they treat Sam Darnold in 2024 and JJ in 2024? It's not the same because JJ was a rookie. So it was Sam Darnold taking the first team reps for the entire minicamp. But it also, I mean, he was a rookie and they wanted McCarthy to have all the time in the world to develop. And rather than, it wasn't really talk about that was not a competition at all. So I guess you could say that is, well, yeah, I mean, but I think the circumstances are quite different. from he's a third-year guy, and they want to be able to say that we gave every opportunity for you in the minicamp. But yeah, I mean, the distribution of reps is interesting for why they're doing it. Joker says, couldn't McCarthy ruin the Cardinals' tank? That's true. Yeah, that's true. But if you're a bad franchise, shouldn't you just like try to take every swing at a quarterback that you can? Hans, any signs of JJ hitting more touch passes downfield with arc? Hoping to see this. It looks very similar to me. Like, I haven't seen way more touch passes. I've seen the good line drive passes. And even with deep shots, like, he's been pretty good at those at times, like, throwing it 30 yards down the field because he has a good arm. The most of his best completions have been the same sort of like line drive throws that he's had. And remember, like last year at this time and during practice, we thought that JJ McCarthy looked pretty good. And I think he looks fine so far. Purple Kool-Aid, love O'Neal, but with him being more of an undersized athletic tackle whose game is based on his ability to anchor, I do worry about whether we're going to overextend him and then eat a bunch of cap. I mean, great athletes at that position do tend to last into their 30s. The ultimate athlete is Trent Williams. We've seen how great he has been over his career, and he's 38. Jason Peters went a long time in the NFL. Lane Johnson has been a long time. I mean, Lane Johnson is probably the example of why, like you just keep Brian O'Neal and you figure out the rest in terms of your contract situation. Son of Beavers, money and years wise, what would the O'Neal contract look like? I would think that it would be somewhere around $25 to $27 million per year over 3 years, with basically 2 of those years guaranteed. So you'd probably be looking at, if we were going, what's 27 times 3, whatever that is, 27 times 3 with maybe like 40 or 50 guaranteed, somewhere in that ballpark. That sounds right to me, to make it a 3-year contract, but it's actually 2, maybe have money that could be moved around. That seems fair. And that would take him through age 34. That's where it's really hard to project. Early 30s in tackles, you're still probably in decent shape. But after that, you really have no idea with any football player. Joker said they don't hit free agency unless the Vikings are dumb enough to not re-sign O'Neal. Blunt, when the leg is kicking in practice, did they distract him with blowhorns or something? No, I don't think so. I don't remember that ever happening. Did they do that at other practices? I don't think so. Son of Beavers, how many open roster spots are up for grabs on the 53-man roster this year? Less than 5? And if so, where are those spots? I mean, I think that you probably are talking about it is less than 5 that we could just write in, but we don't know what injuries are going to happen. That's for sure, that, injuries can certainly happen. So then you start looking for, other players and competitions. As far as who makes the roster, since they let you have 17 practice squad players or whatever, it's just not the same. It doesn't have the same sort of juice. I'm trying to think where that would be. Back end of wide receiver, back end of corner. Safety seems kind of settled with Jacoby Thomas being a 3rd-round draft pick. Linebacker depth, D-line depth. Those are probably the spots. Offensive line, interior offensive line depth. I mean, it's all that stuff. Probably 45 to 49 spots are pretty settled. Yeah. That we can figure out on the 53, but you never know how things are going to change. You really don't. Autumn, do you get the feel of Kyler showing leadership with the rest of the team the way JJ does, with fist bumps and joking around? I haven't really been looking for fist bumps, mostly just watching passes, but I do know this. I mean, Kyler Murray is not the most emotive guy. Is that a way to put it? Like, JJ McCarthy is over the top. And I don't mean that in a bad way, very energetic, very, like you said, dapping up people, having conversations with people all the time. I mean, that's not who Kyler Murray's personality is. So, but I can't tell you if I've noticed him I don't know that like he is that type of guy, but I'll keep an eye out for it, I suppose. Rebuilding since 1961 says, would like for JJ to be successful, but he has to realize the competition is the name of the game. He has to perfect his craft, but the coaches have to think about the Vikings and he has to battle. Yeah, I think that's fair. Ron says they are just starting camp. How can they talk about it until they see training camp? Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing is we will really know by what happens when it matters the most. I mean, this is because this is a learning phase of the offense, defense, because this is a slow motion version of the Minnesota Vikings. It's not that easy to figure it out, which is kind of what I'm talking about here with the rep distribution. Like, it's not that easy to figure out how much progress, how much of a competition. So we will figure it out, as we go into training camp. Like, that's when we're really going to get that sense. And I do not expect that Kevin O'Connell's going to walk out on Thursday and say, yep, Kyler won the competition, guys. See ya in late July. Like, I just don't expect that. We're going to see how it plays out then. And if we get into the middle of August and they're still competing and splitting reps, then something really interesting is going on. And I just don't expect that right now based on what we've seen. Tyson says, if you had to rank the position groups, how would they stack up against each other? Let's see. Well, I would say that their strongest position group is wide receiver. And probably after that, it's offensive line when it's healthy is probably next. And then I want to go linebacker is pretty deep now that Jake Golday is in there. Corner, I think, is deeper now that James Pierre and Chuck Demings are there. Safety is still a big question mark for me. I mean, tight end, if that's a different position group, is very strong with their top two. Running back remains a question. I mean, we know what they have in Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones, but the running game remains a question of how that can take a step forward. So, I mean, I guess just to completely answer the question, wide receiver would be number 1 for me. Offensive line 2, linebacker 3, and then tight end, corner, and then you start to get into safety and running back are probably the biggest questions. Purple Kool-Aid, let's not forget the Vikings have a history of backups taking them unexpectedly far. Maybe JJ will be that guy. I mean, maybe. Like, that's what I'm saying. That's why I was saying this whole time that, like, trading McCarthy just doesn't really sit well as an idea with me at this moment, because you never know what is going to happen. Also, I mean, to tell you the truth, like, anybody who comes into the comment section and just like trashes Kyler Murray, I just don't believe you're a Vikings fan. I just think you're a jerk. Like, I just can't believe that if you really like the team, that you would just like hate your starting quarterback. Although it happened with Darnold and all of you were absolutely right. Ahmed says, it seems like they've made a mess of the quarterback situation. I don't see a way to keep quarterbacks on the roster in the way that's not going to be divisive in the locker room. I think that something like that on this team is probably overrated. Like, the whole, will they split the locker room? Is there going to be, I mean, last year was an utter disaster and this team stayed together. It's veteran players. It's experienced guys. It's mature people. Like, they've really built this team on a lot of really strong personalities in the best way and leadership wise. So I have a tough time thinking that that would be the case. If Kyler Murray started off 2-4 and was playing poorly and they kept going, then maybe eventually people would look around and say, what the heck, we should just go to JJ McCarthy. But I think it would only really have to be that situation where it becomes an issue. Ahmed says they see, oh no, I read that one. Sorry. Hamza says, continue reporting as you do without being influenced by the pro McCarthy cultists. Yeah, the McCarthy people are pretty strong online, but, look, I always want to make it clear that I think the ball is in JJ McCarthy's court for what happens for his career and going forward here. And I think that if Kyler Murray is QB1, which I expect, that there's a good chance McCarthy gets in the game. And it's on him to show that he's ready and that he can prove it. Like, as I've said, like there's way too many quarterbacks who have made something of themselves when they failed at first to ever give up on somebody. But I also can't ignore like what is right in front of us about the two players' histories. JP, do you think that the defense will be better this year? Looks like we'll be able to stop the run more than we did last year, but not sure about the pass rush. As far as the defense being better, I struggle with that a little bit, but it's a lot more up in the air than last year was. With so many veterans last year, if they had anything less than a great defense, it would be a huge disappointment. And early in the season it was, but it was largely driven by injuries early in the season. When they were completely healthy, they were a great defense. This just has more questions. Dallas Turner, Caleb Banks, Dominique Orange, the safety position. So I think the variance is higher. I have a tough time thinking that a Brian Flores defense won't be good, at least, in the top 15. But top 15 is not really good enough if you're going to really compete. So I think right now, like they are a top 10 level defense, but that's going to require that Dallas Turner is a double-digit sack guy. It's going to require that Caleb Banks plays 500 snaps and is good. It's going to require that, the corners probably have to stay healthy, that the safeties and Josh Metellus really leads that group in a similar way to Harrison Smith. So there's a lot more questions. The FanDuel question of the day was that the Arizona Cardinals over-under is 4.5 for this season. What would it be? How many wins would they get if J.J. McCarthy was traded to the Arizona Cardinals? Just sort of tongue-in-cheek with all the trade talk. And Pizza Gary goes with 5 to 6. I think they could get to 7 wins with McCarthy. But, Brissett's really a struggle bus. So I think Brissett is okay when his team is losing by a lot of points, but maybe not somebody that's going to get you too many wins. The dog is indicating to me that he needs to go out. So I probably will high boy time. Mac, what do you think Mac Jones ends up with the Vikings? I mean, I don't think so right now, anytime soon, but maybe if he becomes a free agent next year, he's in a quarterback competition with a young player. I guess that could happen. Viewbox says it seems the national media is plugged in on JJ and Kyler. Penix and Tua are in the same situation. Well, that's because Penix has not played at all in practice, and also it's the Atlanta Falcons. So, I think Kyler is much more intriguing quarterback than Tua, because Tua has just sort of collapsed in Miami. Whereas, with Kyler, there is the idea that it's not that he's played poorly even over the last 23 games. Like since Jonathan Gannon's been there, the last 3 seasons, there's been injuries, but it's not like he's played poorly. It's really a test of what you could put around a guy. But you're right. There does seem to be more. I also think that most people just think that Penix is going to be the quarterback once he's healthy, and that the ceiling for them is pretty limited. At least that's how I view it. Autumn says, how about some way too early preseason quarterback predictions? Who sees some play? KOC doesn't tend to play the starters much. Could be helpful for Kyler. Usually the starters, Darnold only had 1 series. Kirk only took 1 series. I could see the same thing here, like a 1 series thing for Kyler. If I'm looking at JJ McCarthy, I think he should play a lot. I think he should play the first half of every game. If they're really, really, truly committed to the JJ McCarthy development, then throw any injury concerns aside. You got to play the guy as much as you possibly can. I thought they should have played him in the first half of every preseason game last year, because it's just hard to get on a real football field. Purple Rain, what's your take on why things with McCarthy are the way they are now? Bad luck, circumstances, the team didn't cultivate him properly, or just not that good. Could be one of each. I'll take a percentage. There's like a pie chart from all those things. I think that it starts with the actual skill set and not being a natural thrower, And when you're not a naturally good thrower, you need a lot of work. You can become a good thrower eventually, but you need a lot of work. And he didn't get it because of the injury. And then even last year where he started to make progress with the throwing in training camp and had the good start to the first week, but then you just get set back by an injury and then another injury. So I do think that bad luck and circumstance has been a big part of this, but I also think that historically speaking, drafting quarterbacks who haven't played a whole lot of football is a very big risk. Kyler is one of them, but he was a number 1 overall pick, and it's a little different story athletically. But a lot of the quarterbacks that didn't play much football, like Alex Smith or Ryan Tannehill, they needed a long time to develop. And the Vikings just don't have that time for McCarthy. If this was the Tennessee Titans, you would just be like, what are you doing? Play JJ McCarthy. Like, see what you've got. Figure it out. Get him as many reps as possible. The timeline is a big part of the conversation of why Kyler Murray is here. I don't think it's that they didn't train him properly or didn't cultivate something or didn't do whatever with the offensive scheme or O'Connell this or that. I don't buy that. I really think that he is a raw prospect, much more raw than people thought, and he needs time to get a lot of throws under his belt before he's going to be able to get there. And I think at some point in the NFL and his career, that's going to happen. I just don't know when or where. But I think that's the main thing, is that those injuries just set him back. I'd be very curious to know how many players in the NFL who have early injuries in their career end up turning out to be what they're supposed to be, because it's very important to get those learning reps early in your career. Anyway, so yeah, Purple Kool-Aid, you are right that Darnold had a lower cap hit last year, but the same thing would be if you extend Kyler Murray. Like, you're going to set up the contract so he's not going to have a massive cap hit. That's my point about the way that you do these things is flexible. Like, these guys have big contracts, but sometimes they're big contracts in finger quotes because they're able to make the cap hits flexible to do what they want with the roster. So, Mike, have the FanDuel odds for the Vikings starting quarterback for week 1 changed today? I do not believe so, but I'll take a look. Let me take a look real quick. Might as well take a look. Let me see. Where is that? Starting quarterbacks. It has not changed. Kyler Murray is still minus 1,000 to start, and JJ McCarthy is plus 600. So, nope, it has not changed. And Carson Wentz plus 7,000. I suppose it could always happen. Let me speed run through a few more comments, and then we'll get to my interview with Tyler Dunne. You prefer Smitty instead of Harry? Oh, I like Harry. I like calling him Harry. Purple Rain could see Harry pulling an Eric Weddle, stays in shape, comes out of retirement for a good team in the playoff run. I think he's only going to come back if it's here. That would be my guess. Today is the greatest day for McCarthy stock since Vikings Cowboys. That's funny. That's funny. I should do a Lynx corner each week. Yeah, I mean, my wife is the play-by-play broadcaster, so I can't be as, I mean, they're a great team, so I would never have to be critical, but I can only do this one way. Honestly, you know. I love that. I love that some of you are trying to say that I'm a hypocrite for saying that 7-on-7 is not really a great indication of how someone plays football. That's just comical to me. So, man, some of you guys are just in a rough place. Yep. That's just comical. I literally give a disclaimer every year. I've done it this year numerous times that 7-on-7s, OTAs, and minicamp, the practices are slow motion. They're not physical. And every single even bit of praise that I give to a corner or a wide receiver, I say this. And then you're like, how dare you be such a hypocrite? Imagine this. I mean, look at this jackass. Imagine what would be said if JJ threw those interceptions. I mean, do you hear yourself? Do you hear yourself? Imagine, like, oh my God, I know. I would just cry on the sideline. I mean, it's just bizarre, man. Some of the ways you guys talk about football is just bizarre. No matter how many times, like, look, from day one of this minicamp, OTAs, Kyler Murray's clearly the better thrower. He's clearly been the way better NFL quarterback. What do you want? Yeah, when a wide receiver runs the wrong way and he throws it to a defender, I'm not going to scream for them to cut Kyler Murray. I mean, let's be adults here. Jay says, Jay Vikings 74. What did you think of Seifert's question today for JJ? I think it was uncalled for. Number one, I'm not going to comment ever on what my colleagues do on this show. Like, that's just not going to happen. I'm not going to break down my colleagues' questions at press conferences. I'm here to talk about the Vikings, not my friends and what they ask. But I will say, why would that be uncalled for? There's all sorts of talk on the Vikings radio station about potential trades. Why would it be uncalled for to ask him if he wants to be traded? You would ask any quarterback ever who is in a competition after being a first-round quarterback if they want a fresh start somewhere else. Why would that be uncalled for? Paul, is it possible the extra reps for McCarthy could be for the benefit of the new GM? Possibly. Yeah, I mean, Nolan Teasley's getting a fresh set of eyes. That's why, I mean, the trade idea, I think you'd want Teasley to see him in training camp before you did something like that. So, Paul, you're funny. Why aren't you taping KOC's eyelids open and shining a bright light until he gives you the answers to who the starting quarterback is? I know. I never thought of that. Jack says, think that Dante Fleming will be the breakout guy. We'll see some legit play on special teams. He has legit talent. I've liked what I've seen. I mean, he's fast. He's definitely fast. And they need somebody else who could be the stretch the field guy, and he could be in that conversation. Yep. Mad Zen Music. How many teams could JJ start for this season? How many could Kyler start for? Well, I mean, Kyler could start for probably a lot of teams. I don't know if he's taking the job of other teams, but he could be a starting quarterback since he has been and has been pretty good. How many would be interested in trading for JJ is only a couple. Teams are not settled on their quarterback situation. But what happens all the time is that, all the time we think we know everything about quarterback situations, and by halfway through the season, we learn that we don't. Like, that's what happens all the time. So anyway, rough night for a lot of you guys. So hopefully we'll try again tomorrow. Emily Leiker is going to be on the show tomorrow. We'll be breaking down the practice and what we hear from the Vikings. Matt Daniel's going to talk, so we're going to hold punting competitions accountable. And also, let's see, what else? Thursday, Dane Mizutani and I will have a full recap of everything we learned in the spring, and we will give our takes then about what Kevin O'Connell says about the quarterback competition. I will not bring a hot poker and jab him with it. Tell us what you're doing. But we'll see what he has to say, and we'll try to read between the lines, and we'll have some fun from there. So anyway, I had a really good conversation with Tyler Dunne earlier today out at TCO Performance Center, national NFL writer. So I'm going to bring you that conversation now. And thanks everybody for watching and listening and jumping in and having a mostly good conversation about we'll never forget the day that Kyler Murray had not one, but 2 interceptions at 7-on-7s. We'll never forget it. James Cameron might make a movie about it. We'll see. Anyway. All right. Thanks, guys. Here's my conversation with Tyler Dunne. Football. Hey, welcome inside TCO Performance Center. Matthew Coller here, along with NFL national writer Tyler Dunne of Go Long. Tyler, great to see you out here in Minnesota for a nice hot day. We just got done watching Minnesota Vikings minicamp, of course, and I would like you to break down every play that we saw from minicamp, all the 7-on-7s, all the walkthroughs, every throw by Kyler Murray and JJ McCarthy. No, seriously. But it is an interesting team, right, to look at because it's got a new general manager. It's got a lot of veteran players who are expecting to win. Mm-hmm. It's got a head coach who's won a lot of games that has not gotten over the playoff hump. Oh, and it's got a quarterback competition. So I would love your thoughts. Now that you're here, you've had a chance to talk to some people about the Vikings quarterback situation with Kyler Murray.
I thought you were Matt Foley there with the air quotes, right? From the old SNL days.
Living in a performance center down by the river.
Actually, you know what? That wasn't Matt Foley. Who was that character on SNL? Chris Farley. When he went with the air quotes, it was somebody else. God, Bennett Brower? I can't remember. Sorry. This is the content that people want. But yes, it was hot out there. I feel somewhat like a polar bear just dropped into the Sahara Desert. And OTAs and minicamps and training camp. I'm not built for it in Western New York. I'm just used to snow and cold and wooded climates. But yeah, there was some football out there today, Matthew Coller, and I'm with you. It seems like a bit of a ruse, a bit of a quote-unquote quarterback competition that probably will end soon, we would think.
I would think so.
If you're interested in Kyler Murray really getting those reps and being the guy and the rest of the team kind of rallying behind him. And look, we see this every year. In Indianapolis, it was the same thing. Daniel Jones is signed. Anthony Richardson is still there. The writing's on the wall. You're going to stress competition because that's probably the message you want to spread throughout the locker room at every position. You don't want the quarterback to be an exception to the rule. A coach has got to do his thing. But yeah, it's pretty clear out there, even in this setting, that Kyler Murray is the superior quarterback. Does that mean that you completely give up on a first-round pick in J.J. McCarthy? Not necessarily. Football's a weird game. People get hurt all the time. People can go to new teams and resurrect their career. But for where the Vikings are right now, spending the money that they did last year, It's a really good team with the potential to be great. So you've got to roll with the best quarterback. And Kyler Murray, as you've documented on our show and at your site at Purple Insider in great detail, Matthew, and everybody that's watching or listening to Go Along, make sure you subscribe and listen to Matthews. I always call you Matt. Should I call you Matthew?
Does not matter to me. I know
I've been working in some Matthews lately.
There are people who care a lot. Matthew Stafford is one. He doesn't like Matt. He only likes Matthew Stafford. But me, I don't care.
You know, my college roommate, Jimmy Paul, I think I'm the only one who calls him Jimmy. Everybody else calls him James. So I don't want to offend you if you prefer Matthew. Okay, but everybody out there, please consume Matt's content because you've nailed it from the get-go. On Kyler Murray really being the front runner here, I think it makes all the sense in the world to just make it his team sooner rather than later.
Now, you report on all 32 teams, and one of the things that I've been doing for a while now is kind of deep diving on Arizona and the circumstances that Kyler Murray had there. And to call it less than ideal would be very Midwest polite. Disaster at times throughout his time in Arizona. Most recently, I think that Jonathan Gannon and Kyler connected pretty well, but the supporting cast, the defense, the weapons that he had, really nothing like this. The hardest question to answer in football is, how is a quarterback going to perform in a new place with a new situation? And truly, how does an environment impact a quarterback? Because we saw it with Sam Darnold, and then he went to another great environment and continued to be really good. But also we saw the limitations of that, where Nick Mullins played here and J.J. McCarthy played here, and it was not the same type of performance as we saw from Kirk Cousins or Sam Darnold. So how do we figure out what, or even begin to project what Kyler Murray can be, knowing that he came from kind of a different world in terms of a franchise, but also knowing that he is not by any means this flawless, perfect, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson level of a quarterback? How do we start to figure out what that could actually look like?
That's the needle to thread here, isn't it? Because this is not ideal if you're the Minnesota Vikings, but the Minnesota Vikings have kind of lived in this world our entire lives. Yes. I know you're a big Jeff George guy. You might be his number one fan.
I really, truly, actually might be. I should get. Jeff is around. Like, I should try to get him on the show.
You should have him on the show.
No one likes watching Jeff George old games as much as I do. But also, Warren Moon and even Sam Darnold or Sam Bradford. Like, this has happened many times. And what's unique about it, because there's a lot of franchises that have a ton of quarterbacks. The Jets have a ton of quarterbacks that have come through, is that they tend to win with them. So with someone like Kyler, it doesn't feel outrageous to be saying this should work with this guy who was had a bad situation before and now is being given a wide open passing game with all sorts of weapons.
Yeah, I mean, the Vikings don't want to bottom out. They don't want to be bad. That's from the top down. And I think it's commendable to want to compete year in and year out. They have competed for Super Bowls many of these years with many of these quarterbacks. Throw Brett Favre in 2009 in there as well. So I get it. There is a needle to thread where you can build a roster. You can find a veteran on his second, third, or fourth team and go for it. Maybe that's Kyler Murray, right? Out of the batch of quarterbacks that were available for Minnesota this offseason, you had to do something, right? You can't count on J.J. McCarthy, all the lights going on in year 3, really year 2 for him, and him being everything that you thought he could be in your wildest imagination. There was too much ugly, right? And I think that was kind of like Mike McDaniel's problem with Miami. He would always just see the good and the great in everybody and not necessarily see the bad.
Right.
Sometimes you have to look at the bad and be like, this might be who this player is. More than, quick trigger 2, a hand of the baton to Tyreek Hill and off he goes. So credit to Kevin O'Connell and the Minnesota Vikings for being honest with themselves. Okay, then what are your options? I'm sure you've done many a pod on those options.
Oh, yeah.
To me, Kyler Murray out of that group is probably the best bet. He doesn't cost anything right now. You spent more than anybody last season. You've got maybe the best non-quarterback in football in Justin Jefferson. Brian Flores is perhaps the best assistant coach in football. He'll figure it out on defense, even without a guy like Jonathan Grenard. I think if everything kind of aligns, Kyler Murray, and you've pointed this out as well, as recently as 2 years ago, has proven he's more than just this run around playmaking quarterback, which that stuff's fun and great. And he's tiny, but it doesn't really matter because he creates his own passing windows. He can operate under center. And Kevin O'Connell wouldn't be taking this chance in Kyler Murray if he didn't think he could run his offense. And imagine how many hours of film that he's watched of Kyler Murray pouring over that day after day after day, night after night after night. He's not putting his career on the line if he doesn't think that Kyler Murray can run his show. And I think that You've seen some proof of that in the offense he was in Arizona when he had a lot else going on, which I'm sure we'll get into. What a travesty of an organization that is.
Well, I definitely wanted to get into Kevin O'Connell and where he stands and how all the coaches in the NFC North have their own specific brand of pressure. But since we're focused on Kyler here, I need you to expand on what you just said about Arizona, because that's been my research too, that it's just a really tough organization to come from. But also, there's been a lot of things over the years that have been said about Kyler Murray and his personality and leadership and whether he plays too many video games, which obviously, as a video game player myself and knowing that, I don't know, what percentage of the league is playing Madden or Call of Duty? Like 60% of these guys? I mean,
right.
Also, it was really early in his career. And I think when things started to clash with Cliff Kingsbury and then the contract comes into it, that's where some of that stuff started to come out. I don't think it's all that relevant to the Minnesota Vikings, but there is also a smoke and fire element to Kyler Murray not necessarily always being on the same page with the Arizona Cardinals. And it's hard to just point to the bad organization when it comes to him and the way that that whole thing went.
Well, I believe we saw J.C. Tretter out there at practice today, heading up the NFLPA. And it was his brainchild, right? The NFLPA report cards.
Yeah.
And I mean, Michael Bidwell, the Arizona Cardinals, F's across the board year in year out.
F-minus,
sorry.
F-minus.
F-minus.
Didn't know there was an F-minus. I always understood it as just F, but that means that it was extra bad.
I can remember like a decade ago, me and my buddies, we had a fantasy football draft, and we were I wasn't in the league, but I was grading all of their drafts, and I did F-minus for somebody as a joke, because it doesn't exist.
Right, it doesn't exist, but it does for Michael Bidwell. Yeah,
it's that bad, and I've talked to people in that building. It's a culture of fear. I mean, every example of every horrible boss that you could ever read in a Simon Sinek book is Bidwell, is Arizona.
Yeah.
And you're the quarterback in that building. It does, as you noted, it's not to excuse his flaws. Kyler Murray has flaws. Where there's smoke, there's probably fire. But I've talked to a coach on that staff about the video game stuff, and he said, yeah, there's probably some truth to it, but Look, all these guys play video games to an extent.
Right.
I mean, Caleb Williams was just celebrated for it. He's on the cover of Madden. He's doing a podcast with the Kelseys. They asked him if he plays video games. He literally grabs his controller and holds it up to the camera. He's like, I got it right here. I mean, he wasn't getting killed for that. I mean, it's part of the culture. If you don't have kids, you got to occupy your free time in some way.
Right.
So the older I get, the more I kind of look back at that homework clause, and I don't really give it a lot of credence. It's in there for a reason, for sure. I mean, you're giving somebody a lot of money.
Right.
That is a little troublesome if you've got to put it in writing. But he's a gamer. That's the way the coach put it. He's a gamer. He's going to get out there. He's going to create. He's going to improvise. He's going to play the position unlike anybody else. And that should be maximized. You should use that. And that's the job of a coach. So it's on Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings to figure out what is that balance. And to you, what is that? Where he's going to have his offense. He's going to want him to play the quarterback position a certain way, but also he's got to create. You don't want to take that element away from him.
From the J.J. McCarthy perspective of all this, because I think that we all know that there's a ceiling with Kyler Murray that probably has not been tapped yet, because he has not had ever a top 10 defense. 10 is only the top third. He's never, ever had a top 10 defense. And since DeAndre Hopkins hasn't had anything that he hasn't even had a wide receiver that approaches Jordan Addison. I'm not even sure he's had a receiver that's as good as Juwan Jennings. I mean, if Trey McBride being the tight end, but I don't think he's had a receiver who's better than Juwan Jennings. And there's two receivers better than him here. And there is a coach who has won Coach of the Year. I didn't see that happening with Jonathan Gannon or Cliff Kingsbury, right? So I think we know that if things all click into place, we've seen it enough times to where this could potentially take them. From the J.J. McCarthy angle, is it bailing too early on McCarthy? There's a lot of talk about potentially trading him. I'm not sold on the idea that they will do that, at least until the end of training camp, or if some other team has a quarterback go down or whatever. He's under contract with your team. Murray has had injuries throughout his career. Like, you never know what could happen where you need a starter for 5 or 6 games or something. So I haven't really been on board with that idea. But, I mean, you are from the Buffalo area. You've seen E.J. Manuel come and go. You've seen J.P. Lossman come and go. Like, first-round picks don't always work out like Josh Allen, where they suddenly find something totally different. But there's always this, what if though? Like, what if you bail too early? There's a couple of teams that looked pretty stupid when Sam Darnold had back-to-back 14-win seasons, right? In New York and Carolina. You don't really want to be that team. You certainly don't want to have J.J. McCarthy leave and then become Sam Darnold for somebody else and turn a corner. I don't know how you deal with this problem of drafting a quarterback who really needs to play, and he really needs a year or two of just working on every single element of his game, but especially throwing, especially like mastering the timing with wide receivers, but also half reps at minicamp is not going to get you there. It's not going to change anybody's fate. So what do you do with J.J. McCarthy?
Well, if he's a problem and a cancer in the locker room and pissing and moaning and upset with being a backup, you find a trading partner, right? Yeah. I'm sure that's what he would want if it got to that point. We're speaking in hypotheticals here.
Yeah.
I don't know how he would take the news that he's a backup quarterback. I think that it's almost, if you're Kevin O'Connell, you're the Minnesota Vikings, it could be a win-win where, okay, how are you going to respond, J.J. McCarthy?
Yeah.
You've won almost every game you played. His record's crazy. High school to college.
Yeah.
Like,
He lost, I think, like 1 or 2 games.
Right. So this is the first time he has really been socked in the jaw, and it's in the NFL, and he's getting memed. He's getting mocked. It's crazy. It reached levels I've never seen before, even by Twitter standards.
Yeah, with the 9 stuff.
Yes,
things
the
like,
9 stuff.
Yeah.
And we all see that picture in the locker room. Okay. And now you're benched. Now we had to go out and get Kyler. How are you going to respond? Because there's something in him that you loved to draft him in the first round.
Right.
There was conviction there. Like you at some point you believed if you're Kevin O'Connell and the Minnesota Vikings. So you want to exhaust that potential that you originally saw. And if he does get through this moment, who knows? Kyler Murray's had injuries. There might be a time this season when J.J. McCarthy has to start 2 or 3 games. And does he pull a Malik Willis and ball out and earn himself a huge payday
That's a great
somewhere.
example. Yeah.
Man, it's all up to him is my point, I guess.
Yeah.
So like we were talking earlier at practice, and part of me's thinking like, yeah, of course you trade him and maybe you get some value, you cut bait, you get what you can. I don't even really know what his market would be if it gets to that point. But there is an upside to just seeing how he handles all of this if you're the Vikings. Because it's only, well, I guess year 3. So you've got a little time here on that rookie contract.
I totally agree with you when you said it's up to him. Like the ball is in your court because somebody like Malik Willis, I've been talking about different examples like Geno Smith went and was a backup for a while. That was a longer process for him. Ryan Tannehill kind of flamed out of Miami and then had to take a backup job, eventually wins it in Tennessee. The commonality for all these guys and Malik Willis is that it usually happens somewhere else. Usually it gets so uncomfortable with the team that drafted you and brought you in when you don't meet their timeline, because the NFL used to be totally comfortable with developing a quarterback over 5 years and too freaking bad if you don't like being the backup quarterback. But the world just doesn't work that way anymore. It works on rookie contract timelines because you kind of have to figure it out right now. And I also think with the amount of power that players have, the amount of scrutiny that they take, if you get in and you fail right away, the public, the media, everything else, and the team, like they all feel so much pressure that it just gets uncomfortable and awkward to have that person here when you're bringing in another starter. Whereas if this is 1989, there's a lot less, there's no social media, but also there's these long contracts that you can't get out of and you just have to deal with it. That's not the world that we live in now for JJ McCarthy. I tend to believe that if he takes a Malik Willis-like attitude or Jordan Love-like attitude, if Jordan Love was thrown in the same situation without the couple of years that he had, I think that he does struggle right away. And I think that Malik Willis looked horrible right away for the Tennessee Titans. So this doesn't have to be your fate. He's 23 years old. You can have a long career, but if the Vikings keep him in-house and don't trade him away, it will all depend of when the opportunity comes. There is going to be a time, week 11, week 2, I have no idea, where you are called upon to play in a football game. Totally. But first, you have to earn QB2 because they trust Carson Wentz. So you have to have the trust. And then second, you have to show that there's vast improvement there from where you were before. You have to take care of the football. You have to make good decisions. You have to find Justin Jefferson and complete passes to him because everybody else has. If he does that and has a patient approach, then I think he can get through this and eventually be a starting quarterback here or somewhere else. If he doesn't, and it's more of an attitude of how dare they do this to me, then you're going to end up much more like the quarterbacks we talked about that failed in the past, the J.P. Lossmans. He does remind me a lot of E.J. Manuel. If you look at their first 10 starts, nearly identical performance through the first 10 starts. EJ never got another chance. I mean, this thing is not promised to you. And I think young athletes don't really understand that when you come in with so much hype. But I don't know what way it's going to go. I don't think it's a great idea to just ship him out unless it's just become distracting and problematic.
There's some bad owners out there. You know, there could be an injury, there could be desperation. And if somebody says, here's a second round pick, I don't know, then you take it.
That could change things.
It's crazy, though. I mean, I'm getting flashbacks to those joint practices that were right out here, right out on this field. Tennessee Titans and Minnesota Vikings. I was out there with you, was that 2 years ago?
2 years ago, yeah.
And I talked to Malik Willis after one of those practices because he was the forgotten man at that point. They drafted Will Levis. He's just hanging around. Like Ryan Tannehill's still around. So Willis is the odd man out, clearly.
Right.
He had a pretty good practice from what I remember, but I forget his exact words, but he kind of looked me right in the eye. He's like, hey, I didn't know the offense last year. I didn't know the plays. Now I know the plays. And it's showing.
Right.
He barely played that second year and didn't really get a shot. And then he gets into year 3, and then he gets traded for a 7th-round pick. He's written off. He's forgotten about. And to your point, like, how do you respond? He got thrown into action like 10 days later and won Green Bay a game, won him another game. And then the next year, he's not just a caretaker, like functioning. He is making plays, and he earns a big contract with Miami. I've talked to Sean McAvoy, his private quarterbacks coach, at length for a Q&A at the site shortly after he signed that Miami deal. And you go through Malik Willis's life from high school to Auburn to Liberty to Tennessee. I mean, he's been counted out. It's like the opposite of McCarthy in terms of like success on a field and people believing in you. And he has just responded the right way again and again. It's not cliche. Like we see 3 hours on a Sunday. There's so much other football going on behind the scenes. And now JJ McCarthy has a baby, right? He's got a kid to support. He talked about that a little bit today. There's a lot on the line for him. And I'm eager to see which direction he goes.
But a lot of athletes, by the time that they get here, are a little more hardened, as you're talking about with Malik Willis. And Willis was older than McCarthy, too. McCarthy was one of the younger players in that draft when he came out. But he had never dealt with being hit in the mouth before, pretty much ever. I mean, it really just went his way from day one, whether it was IMG to Michigan National Championship.
Even the way they ran their offense. We've talked about it.
Yeah.
You know?
It
was
the
ball 14 times.
Very favorable for a quarterback. It wasn't sit back in the pocket and get hit a million times. It was, make a play for us every once in a while on third down, and we're going to do the rest on the ground. And he came through clutch for them in some big moments, but you've never really had this type of environment where everyone's saying, we're moving on, Kyler's the real quarterback. JJ's been, this bad, which again has never really happened in his life where he has played like he did last year. So learning to deal with that and getting past the shock of that, I think is a huge part for JJ McCarthy. And when we talked to him today, he was, I thought, much more professional about the way he approached his press conference. It was not long-winded. He wasn't dapping all of us up and celebrating, yay, quarterback competition, or anything like that. But he was saying, whatever number of reps they give me, I'm just going to do the best I can and that sort of thing, which is how he should have taken it the first time. But I think JJ wears his emotions on his sleeve a lot, which in this league can make it very difficult for you at times when you deal with stuff like this. So I don't think that any of us know really where this is going to go with either one of these quarterbacks, and it will be very telling from what they've seen if they decide to move on, if he continues to get split reps as they have during minicamp. But I think at some point after minicamp, you have to pretty much decide, because you have a new quarterback with Kyler. Are you going to give him all the reps or not? And that will tell us what they're going to do, at least to start. And then the long term, really, who knows? The rest of the NFC North is super fascinating. Right now, the Vikings are plus 500 to win the North on FanDuel. That's last out of 4. And I think quarterback uncertainty is a big part of that, because roster for roster, coaching staff for coaching staff, I think if you do players 2 through 53 and all the coaching staffs, the Vikings are even or better than anyone else in the NFC North, but the odds are not in their favor. The odds are favoring the Detroit Lions, actually, as the favorite to win the NFC North. Where do you think that Kevin O'Connell fits in with one of the best coached divisions, the most proven coaches, but also a division with a lot of pressure? Dan Campbell, you didn't win, and then came out and said that might have been our only chance, which is a quote that people have continued to go back to. LaFleur has gotten teams to the playoffs, cannot come through in the postseason, and Ben Johnson is the belle of the ball right now, but regression is a heck of a thing in the National Football League. So where does Kevin O'Connell fit within that in terms of, can we call it like a pressure index or something like that?
Well, the GM is new around here,
yes,
so I'd say the pressure ratchets up. Now they're going to want to see this union work together.
Yeah,
he is here for a reason, and they deserve to see it through. I don't think his seat's hot. I mean, you tell me.
I don't think so, but if you pull back and you look at, you've already had someone fired, that's generally an indicator that other people are under a lot of pressure. And the Wilfs have not tolerated many seasons in a row from previous coaches of missing the playoffs.
I just thought he was on parental leave. I didn't know he was fired. Sorry.
Good one.
I'm sorry.
That's a good one.
That's
a good one. Took me a second there. My processing speed for that joke was not great. I was like, no, he's here.
It's only been 5-6 months.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. But when it comes to, someone's already out and you're already changing quarterbacks from the guy you drafted. Oh, and the guy you let go won the Super Bowl. Not exactly on paper, you would say the team is not tolerated. The ownership is not tolerated missing the playoffs. And you have been here long enough to set a certain bar and a certain standard, but when a new GM is part of the process, like suddenly that person is like the new guy in town. Now he doesn't answer to the GM, which is important. He answers to the Wilfs.
Exactly.
So it's not Nolan Teasley evaluating Kevin O'Connell. It is purely the ownership evaluating him. But on the other side of that, you had a horrible season last year, total disaster. Can't believe how awful it was. 9-8, right? And when that happens, that says something about the head coach and his ability to keep his guys pulling in the right direction.
I like him a lot. I love the combination of Kevin O'Connell, his offensive acumen, his style of coaching. We've talked about it a ton, what it was like here with Mike Zimmer before he arrived. He had to undo a lot, rebuild the culture. I know there's that word.
But it's real.
It's real, though. It absolutely is real. And players on this team, that alarm would go off and they dreaded going to work for Mike Zimmer.
Yep.
That is not the case with Kevin O'Connell, and it wasn't the case from the get-go. So that stuff matters. And he's really, really smart. You talk to people around the NFL, Minnesota's offense schematically is highly, highly respected. It was ugly for the quarterback position last year, but his work with quarterbacks, highly, highly respected. And I love that combination. I wasn't sure how it was going to work with the Brian Flores, who is rough around the edges.
Yes, yeah.
Who is very unlike Ed Donatello, the man he replaced, in all the right reasons, where they went, what was it, 13-4, 14-3?
13-4 in 2022 and had, I think, the 28th ranked defense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was tough.
I mean, Harrison Phillips told me they'd be in the film room after some of these crazy wins, and they weren't really addressing problems.
Right, yeah.
Like they should have been. It was just like, oh, we won this crazy game, and we let stuff slide under the rug.
Ed was very, very positive person, to a fault, I think, yeah.
And here's Brian Flores off of the Tua Tagovailoa ugly, ugly divorce. Right. And he's got a lawsuit with the NFL going on. There's a lot going on with Brian Flores. But when it comes to coaching defensive football, everybody, it's such a copycat league, and everybody's copying each other. Who's copying Brian Flores? I mean, or who is Brian Flores copying? Nobody.
No, and they're trying to copy him.
He's creating his own monster on a week-to-week basis. It's a completely different defense week to week. So to keep him, he should be hired somewhere at some point, you would think. And his style of coaching, complementing Kevin O'Connell's style of coaching, I kind of love it. I feel like more teams should try to get different styles of coaches. It could combust, and we've seen it combust in some buildings. But if you can strike the right balance, I mean, hell, you win 9 games with the worst quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
It's not crazy to think Kyler Murray steps in as the best version of himself. They win the division, and they maybe get to a conference championship game. That would not surprise me one bit for the Minnesota Vikings.
The range of outcomes is wild, because if they also had things go exactly like last year, Kyler gets hurt, they can't cobble together the quarterback play, and suddenly you win 6 games. And the defense did lose about 100 quarterback pressures between Javon Hargrave, Jonathan Allen, and Jonathan Grenard. And even though Hargrave and Allen did not perform quite to expectations or their paychecks, they still did have a pretty big impact. And now you're asking Caleb Banks, who's injured and is going to start in training camp, so he's already going to be a little bit behind. Dominique Orange, who's a 3rd-round draft pick, go in there, play defensive tackle. They're trying to put together a couple of veterans in there with those guys. There's more questions now, and Harrison Smith not being here as of this moment is also a huge question, because last year they were not the same under Brian Flores when he didn't have Harrison Smith to mind bleep every other quarterback that was out there trying to call plays, and him making all the adjustments on the fly and everything else. But I do think the NFL has become very interesting, because for a little while there, 2020, 2021, it was the scoring and passing was almost out of control. You were seeing numbers that we had almost never seen before. It was insane. And over the last 5 years, the defensive coordinators and the defensive players have sort of taken back the power. And at one point, I would have told you, you need a number 1 or 2 offense and a baseline level of defense to win a Super Bowl. Now I feel like at this very moment in time, it's almost the other way around, where it's like you need a top 10 offense, but you better have a top 5 defense, or you're not going to have any chance in the playoffs. And look at the Texans, how close they were. Denver, how close they were. And the Patriots had a great defense as well. So I feel like with a team like this, with Brian Flores, they are going to need more pieces if they get there. So what Nolan Teasley has to decide is, do I want to try to get you more pieces, and when do I make that decision? Because we also see more stars traded now than we ever have before. So this can be played a little bit like slow of, all right, if we're 6-2 at the deadline, then you make a big play for someone who might get you over the finish line. But if we're 3-4 or 3-5 or 4-4, maybe we just sort of play it out and see how it goes, and then say to the coaches, well, squeeze as much out of the orange as you possibly can. Get it? Dominique Orange? No. Okay. But you squeeze as much as you can out of it and then make a play there.
Yeah.
But if we compare this team to the rest of the NFC North, like where are you at with, how about this question? Who is the team you're thinking about the most out of the NFC North this offseason?
I'm with the majority on the Detroit Lions, I think. When you watch all of these teams week to week, we do an NFC North podcast that go along with Bob McGinn, and he's dissecting every single game, player to player, grading it like he has for decades. The Detroit's roster, it is part of it's the product of being bad for a while, having a lot of those high picks, but they've drafted so well year in and year out that now they paid their guys. Mm-hmm. I feel like they have the best roster. Mm-hmm. Okay, but you saw on Christmas Day, Jared Goff against Brian Flores, none of that really meant a thing.
Goff versus pressure is always his kryptonite. And without that offensive line that he had, now he had a good season, and ironically, they outscored their opponents by more than anyone else in the division, which is really funny because they finished last.
Yeah.
So there's some bad luck there, but pressure and Jared Goff have always gone together very poorly. But they do have the best roster top to bottom. And I also thought that they showed some things on defense last year before it just collapsed in terms of health. So that's going to be the biggest thing for them. It's health.
I wonder, too, just on your last point with the Vikings, it does kind of shoehorn into an NFC North conversation. Like, if you're the Vikings, and you've got to make a decision at the start of the offseason, you could burn the whole thing down.
Right.
You can go Rams on steroids. I don't know, just push money into the future.
Yeah, right.
Hell, I don't know. Would Myles Garrett have come here? Who knows? But, a trade like that, do something crazy. Correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like they tried to find this middle ground, which it would be the best case scenario because you can kind of pivot either direction.
Yes.
But that's like the sunny side up, half glass. But is it trying to be half pregnant too?
Right.
Should they have gone balls to the wall and just said, let's win, let's go for it?
Should they have been impregnated? Tyler Dunne asks.
Sorry, the Rex Ryan quotes are embedded into my brain forever.
I remember that. But when it comes to the offseason, what they did was gave Nolan Teasley, the new general manager, max flexibility.
They did.
Because
they did him a favor for sure.
At the deadline, you can get, and no disrespect to Jonathan Grenard, who's a great player, and I don't think that he's an easily replaceable player, but you could get pass rush at the trade deadline. Teams are much more wary of timelines now. If they're not going to win, they're going to sell. And that's why we see way more trades, right? And contracts are set up basically to eventually be either extended or traded. And that's why you see a lot of players, moved around the way that they are. So you almost have to take a leap of faith if you're the Vikings of, if we need this, it'll probably be there. We could go acquire someone at the deadline if we think we're a serious contender. But if you're bumping around in the middle, then you want to make sure you have max flexibility in the salary cap, and you want to make sure that you keep your draft picks. They already got an additional third for next year for Jonathan Grenard. The very interesting scenario would be if things were going really badly. And in years past, the ownership has not given the green light to trade away players. The most famous incident of that was Danielle Hunter could have been traded away in 2023 after Kirk got hurt. And they could have gone all the way into the ground and tried to draft either Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, or Drake May. And instead, they kept Hunter. They fought it out. They won 3 more games the rest of the year. And they ended up with J.J. McCarthy and not drafting high enough. Who knows? They might have even taken Penix if they were drafting higher than that. So would they give, in this situation, Nolan Teasley the ability to trade an Aaron Jones, a TJ Hawkinson, a Andrew Van Ginkel? Like, there's enough of these guys, Blake Cashman even, though I think they want to extend Cashman and Brian O'Neill, but there's enough of these guys that you could move out a lot and just stockpile draft capital. And as I'm saying this, I can almost feel Vikings fans being like, yes, but that involves you being bad. And I don't know to the level that they would have to be bad to even do that. Right. So it feels like such a classic Vikings-y place to be, where you're definitely not favored to win the Super Bowl. You're not even favored to really win the division. We could all absolutely see it of you being a really good team, but are you in a position to be good enough? I think that they are a couple of players away from being good enough on the defensive side. Now that defense is driving success in the playoffs and success overall in the NFL more than it has previously. But I don't think that it's there right now on defense. I think that Flores is elevating it and getting as much as he can out of it. But it's not Seattle. It's not like you go up and down the roster and go, oh my God, look at all these freaks that they have. It's not to that level yet.
Boy, the variance with this team is crazy. And I get it. It's June. You can say that about a lot of teams. It's true with the Minnesota Vikings. It can go hard one direction or the other. And the good news is, Nolan Teasley is going to have some options. You're given a new GM and this new partnership with Kevin O'Connell a chance in the present and in the future. So I think that is the best way to go. And that's a great point on defensive football in the NFL. You know, at my site, I tend to complain about the flags and the fines and the softening of the sport. Or at least I did like 2020, 21, 22. We get to January every single year, though, and you see defense winning.
Yep.
It's everything condenses. Everything gets that much tougher on third down. That's when a Brian Flores will be able to bust out his best stuff, hypothetically, if they get into these games. So, I think they are built for it. And I think if you're Minnesota, your hope is, okay, you're not a finished product right now in June. You're not going to be in September, not even in October. But over the course of this marathon, by January, is Dallas Turner wreaking havoc.
Right.
Some of these young players, you know, to you, who is the player, who is the wild card on defense that they're going to need by that time of year to be a stud? Because Seattle's defense going into last season, I think people thought it'd be pretty good. Nobody had a clue it'd be as good as it was.
Because they didn't know Nicky Manware was going to be an absolute superstar. And also they had like 3 guys get 7 or more sacks, another couple guys at 6, 5, like they were such a deep team, and that's where I don't think the Vikings have that. I do not think that this is a very deep team, which means a few guys are going to have to really perform. Dallas Turner is the name. Like that's somebody who they were willing to move Jonathan Grenard to put Dallas Turner in the spotlight. He was very good in the final stretch run when he was just a focused pass rusher and they weren't trying to make him kind of a multiple hybrid outside linebacker type of thing. Mostly that was because Andrew Van Ginkel, when he was banged up, it was like, well, you have to go pretend to be Van Ginkel. I don't think that's who he is. I think he's a guy that just chases the passer, uses his lightning quickness and gets after the quarterback. If he's got double-digit sacks, then he's going to make that type of impact. But if he does not, then you gave away Jonathan Grenard. And, you know, what, did you just sort of do the Sam Darnold of edge rushers thing? Where
he's really good, right? Man.
Like, he's
the Eagles are paying him a lot of money.
$50 million guaranteed, $100 million. Like
Howie tends to know what he's doing.
Yes, right. And I remember saying, like, maybe not trade with the Eagles. And like, there it is. But I think a lot of the trade is belief in Dallas Turner, because if they had no belief in Turner, and I always say, watch what they do more than listen to what they say, they would not have done this if they didn't believe that Turner was going to take that next step. And I think the other guy, it is Caleb Banks, because you are asking a rookie to come in and play a lot of football, to stay healthy for a lot of football, which he has not done in recent years. And even through a combine that had issues with his foot. So can he stay healthy, make an impact right away? I don't think you need him to be a superstar, but it's all youth on that interior defensive line. It is Levi Drake Rodriguez. Jalen Redmond is more of a veteran, like he played in the UFL, but he's only recently become like a quality starting player. And Dominique Orange, I like the concept, building up the D-line. We see that with all the great teams that are excellent in the playoffs of stopping the run. Seattle was number 1 by far stopping the run last year. They averaged 3.7 yards of attempt against, which is just total domination. That's what you're trying to do. But if some of these coin flips don't work out, if Turner's just okay, if Banks only plays 350 snaps, if Dominique Orange isn't ready to dominate at nose tackle, you're still going to be fine, but you're not going to be great. And I think in order to compete for a Super Bowl, you have to be great. Let me ask you about this team that, you may have rubbed some feathers the wrong way. Is that the phrase? Last year.
Ruffled, perhaps.
Ruffled feathers or
two.
rubbed the wrong way. I think I combined both of them. So you ruffled the feathers in a direction that Chicago Bears fans didn't necessarily love regarding Caleb Williams. Now, if people actually read the story, I thought...
What a concept.
Right, I know. Rather than just whatever 3 sentences may have popped up from here or there on your Twitter feed. But if you actually read the story, one of the things you would have noticed in reading it was how badly Caleb Williams needed to be coached like a real NFL player and not the owner of the Chicago Bears, which is the way they treated him as soon as he arrived there, like he was the king or something. And Ben Johnson really did that. And following them last year, it was almost comical of like him pulling them off the field and, I don't know, throwing medieval weapons at the offense when they were messing up. But yet the results were Caleb Williams playing much more like a real quarterback. There is a next step that if he takes is very scary. So in your reporting about Chicago, Caleb Williams, and then seeing how it played out so differently with a new coach, like how big was that difference to you? And the big question is really, is it sustainable? Is Caleb Williams the next great quarterback, or did he have a pretty good season on a team that had everything go right?
You just nailed it. I mean, from day one, OTAs, it was understood this is the Caleb Williams show, and that comes from the top down. Right? It was even bigger than the coaches. It was just kind of the temperature in the room.
Yeah.
The way it was described to me is everything needs to orbit around him. They changed everything. It's all in the series for those that want to check it out. And I think that for those that read, like Thomas Brown by the end of the season tried to do a lot of the stuff that Ben Johnson did from day one.
Yeah.
Treating Caleb Williams as 1 of 53, coaching him hard, like you're going to coach everybody hard, holding him accountable, seeing how he responds to that accountability. By then, it's too little too late. The season is long gone. You're not going to be able to really develop a quarterback at all, but really instill a program. It was bigger than that. You can't do that on the fly in December. Ben Johnson did it from day one. He made it very clear, and I was told Ben Johnson knew exactly what he was getting into.
Yeah.
All of the stuff reported in my series. Somebody close to Ben Johnson called me up at the middle of September and said, "Hey, just so you know, he was well aware."
Yeah.
Of everything that you had reported on. And there's a lot that goes down those lines. Ryan Poles, the way he operates behind the scenes. Caleb Williams, he knew what he was getting into, and he knew, okay, for this to work, I need to coach him hard.
Yeah.
And to Caleb Williams' immense credit, he responded.
Yeah.
He responded.
Absolutely.
I'm sure there were points early in the season Ben Johnson was frustrated. I know he was frustrated. And then he had that Dallas game, and then he started reeling together some of those 2-minute comeback drives, and they won a lot of games. They had no business winning. One of them was against this Minnesota Vikings team. They cover a kick. They probably win that game, Minnesota.
Right, absolutely. They definitely do, yeah.
They give the Bears credit. They found a way to win these games, and Caleb Williams was the tip of the spear for all of that. So how do you somehow extrapolate that over the course of an entire game? I don't know. That's their challenge, because you're not going to get all those turnovers on defense again.
Right. You don't Deshaun
see
Wright
that
is not going to play like
over.
Deion Sanders for an entire year.
Exactly. So you're going to have to get into a rhythm with your passing game, complete more passes. For every quarterback this side of Josh Allen, that's proven to be a difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
But Caleb Williams can do things with a football that few people can, few humans can.
Right.
So we'll see. Talk about variance. That can go hard one direction or the other this season.
There's almost some similarity between J.J. McCarthy and Caleb Williams in that it's up to him. Because if Caleb Williams thinks, based on last year, I'm a megastar now, I'm just going to go out there and run around and do whatever I want and make plays, and that's what I did last year, and It worked. So we were one DJ Moore correct route or whatever it was happening in the playoffs from beating the Rams, being in the NFC Championship. I'll just do it again. If you think that, the NFL always has a tendency to prove you wrong because now it's an entire year of game planning for him. I mean, this is Kyler Murray early in his career, had a lot of success and has been humbled, and now can't talk enough about learning, getting better, learning the offense. If he just sort of slacks off and says, well, I did it last year, I'll just do it again, I don't think they have the same amount of success. The scary thing for the rest of the NFL would be if Caleb Williams did what Josh Allen did, which is, I need to put in so much work into the routine throws because we've seen Ben Johnson's offense. Guys are open. And I've talked about this before, but the completion percentage over expected is a pretty decent stat to tell you a little more about accuracy than completion percentage, which doesn't tell you a lot. And his completion percentage over expected was one of the worst in the league, which means guys are open and you're just missing them. And he had enough playmaking to hit on the other plays. But if you don't do that, you're going to put a cap on what you can actually be. The other thing with Chicago that's very odd to me is with Ryan Poles, I sway back and forth between, oh, that's a really good job, Ryan Poles, and I don't really, can you explain why did you? And signing Grady Jarrett, for example, very bizarre move to me. He had fallen way off, and they signed him to a huge contract last year. And then this year, they're just like, I don't know, shrugs, like defensive line, quarterback pressure. Who needs that? We'll just have, and on draft night, and I think Thieneman's a great pick for them. I really do. But like, what? He said something to the extent of, well, quarterbacks will have more time, but we'll cover them better. And you're like, I mean, yeah, that's great. But if you give quarterbacks in the NFL no pressure whatsoever, go look at the numbers when quarterbacks have clean pockets, especially that guy in Detroit who ignites anyone with a clean pocket and struggles when anyone gets in his face. I don't really understand some of that, how they've not been able to take full advantage of the rookie contract for Caleb Williams and how they could have such a meh offseason when you should be poor. I mean, you should be in the Myles Garrett conversation. You should be in the Max Crosby discussion, the Bradley Chubb, the whoever else is out there to go after to rush the passer. And they didn't do any of it. I just am not buying that you can demand your secondaries that get hurt all the time. Just do all the work back there. You'll be fine. That's where I think it's going to get him because there's no way you get, what did they get, like 32 turnovers or something last year? There's just no way that happens again.
Yeah, I'm with you on pressure. It's a chicken or the egg debate. They both help each other. The pass rush and the coverage. That's always true. But these quarterbacks are too good.
Yep.
The top 10, 12 quarterbacks in the NFL, if you can't get in their face, they will carve you up.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if you're sitting back with two safeties. It doesn't matter if you're disguising everything back there. If they have time, they will find somebody open and they will thread the needle.
Yeah.
They're too accurate. So they're banking on resetting the safety position. Maybe that it's going to help. I give them credit for that. They at least acknowledged, okay, we are not going to be able to force all of those turnovers again.
Right.
We need different defensive backs in there. But I was just like you, surprised they didn't add a pass rusher of significance. I mean, Montez Sweat can be really good. I'm picturing him blowing up Jordan Morgan in that big time spot.
Oh, yeah.
Yet, over the course of the season, left a lot to be desired. You've got to get in the quarterback's face, whether you're blitzing, whether you're not blitzing. Dennis Allen was able to turn that wild card game on its head in the second half against Green Bay because, look, their backs were against the wall. It's 21-3. They've got nothing to lose. They're going to send the house. They're blitzing cornerbacks. They're doing all kinds of funky stuff. And in that second half, it was a glorious thing for the Chicago Bears. They got back into the game. They stole the game. Javon Bullard, we sat down and talked all about it for a piece earlier this offseason. Green Bay's trying to find a killer instinct because that game, they were emasculated.
Yep.
That was emasculation in the highest degree for the Green Bay Packers. But it's one half of football. Like that's not sustainable defensively over the course of the season. So I don't know where their pressure comes from. Maybe another year in the system helps, or trusting on guys within developing and taking a big step. But it's all about the quarterback. I mean, we're always going to come back to the quarterback, and I thought you nailed it with Caleb Williams. If he works like Josh Allen worked, he can take that step. And Josh Allen doesn't get enough credit for his work ethic.
Yeah.
Jordan Palmer in the offseason, Brian Dable during the season. He was willing to put in that time and hit those routine throws, and his game reached another level. It also helped, I think, in a small way, that 2020 season. It was a COVID season, right? Stadiums are mostly empty or completely empty.
Yeah.
He can hear things and see things, and you see the game very clearly. He's second in the MVP voting that year, and his career just takes off.
Right. He also wasn't going out anywhere or doing anything because there was nothing to do.
Very true. Hey, take it easy, though. We got 911 Tavern Wings in South Buffalo.
That is true.
Got good
and
wings.
Barbill, but I don't know if maybe they were probably closed down during that time, or maybe just delivery.
Oh, you're talking about COVID in general.
well, that's what I was saying about like.
I thought you were taking a shot at your old.
No. There are several places to go out in Buffalo.
Matt Coller, Buffalo hater. There it is.
That is not what I meant. I just meant that the whole world was shut down. There's nothing else to do. But
I've kind of forgot about COVID completely.
Me too. Just try to put it out of our minds. Last thing. The Rams are plus 400 on FanDuel to win the Super Bowl, which is crazy high odds. Honestly, it's nuts. Usually you don't even see that unless the team has Tom Brady. But how about this? Rams or the field? It's my favorite question of the offseason. If we were doing a little friendly bet between each other, and I said you could take the Rams or the field, like the old Tiger Woods, Tiger or the field, which way would you go?
Field. Okay,
are you not buying the Rams?
No, I mean, it's a great trade. Myles Garrett, Reggie White, all that stuff. But too much can happen in a football season, man.
Yeah.
Like, crazy stuff is going to happen. Yeah. We could do this podcast for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, and we wouldn't even hit on half it. So I don't know what that crazy thing will be. All I know is the Seattle Seahawks are the defending champs, and people are forgetting about them.
Yep,
but
that's true.
I love Mike McDonald's answer when he's asked about the Myles Garrett trade. He could not care less. Like, next, don't care, whatever. I forget what his words were, but it was great. Their defense is... I think Houston's still the best defense in the NFL. Seattle's right there.
Yep.
And whether they have Myles Garrett or not, they're the champs.
They didn't lose much.
Don't need to tell your viewers and listeners what Sam Darnold can do. You got Jackson Smith and Jigba locked up. I get it. You lose your running back. You're going to lose something when you win a Super Bowl. They'll be able to plug that position. And I love Seattle. I mean, they've from the scouting department to the coaching staff to the personnel, they are a well-oiled machine under John Schneider right now.
I'm just going to take the Rams probably because they have the best players in the entire NFL and the MVP quarterback. So I don't know.
I guess that does matter.
It does matter. It's a pretty big deal.
They don't have fans.
Aaron Donald's going to probably come back.
Yeah,
that's going to be insane.
He's got to come back, right?
That would be. I mean, it would be insane for the NFC, but it would be kind of cool if he just said,
I was surprised how was it Les Snead or Sean McVay doing these interviews basically saying, yeah, we were texting, talking. I'm sure he'll get the itch. Like, if they're talking in those terms,
I know. It's like they're not even trying to hide it.
They're not at all.
I wish Harrison Smith would kind of be like that so we could figure out what he's doing. GoLongTD.com is the place to go. Tyler Dunne, as good as there gets for not only, you do the long form stuff, and when feathers are ruffled, then you do end up making aggregated headlines and so forth. But the week-to-week analysis that you do, podcasting, Jim Monis is a mutual friend of ours that you do podcasting with. It's great. So make sure that you guys check that out. And I'm glad you could come out, man. Great to see you.
Great to see you and those watching in our feed at Go Long. Make sure you check out Matt Coller's content. He is cranking out pods at a rate that is
it's not human. It's not. It's
boggles
like
the brain.
It's basically like Myles Garrett lifting weights only for podcasting.
Yeah, but it's all. But you know what? You're not just Allen Iverson, 01, 02, jacking up 40 shots a game. Like there's quality there. There's efficiency there. I think your analytics would be very kind if we were to break down. You're pumping out these podcasts, but there's a lot of meat on the bone.
I also have an Allen Iverson painting in my house, so there will be no disrespect on this show for him.
As the words were just puking out of my mouth there, I felt bad because I loved AI.
The volume shooter thing is real, though.
Yeah,
the true
is.
AI. Not
he had to. I mean,
right? Who
Aaron
else was going to shoot?
Eric Snow,
yeah.
Matt Geiger, Todd McCullough,
Matt Geiger,
Dikembe,
but it was not really a scorer.
Yeah,
so.
you're right. dragged that team to the finals. You know what's wild is like nobody remembers that they lost that series 4. They just remember him stepping over Tyronn Lue.
Yeah, and what did he score, like 49 or something? 47,
unbelievable
whatever
game
it was.
one.
Yeah. Anyway, Tyler, great stuff, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Football.